The first thing the Erebus ice towers give you is a white, breath-soft stillness, high on Mount Erebus, where warm volcanic vapor rises into Antarctic cold and turns slowly into stone-colored ice. Settle in and let the hour loosen around you. We are not hurrying across this slope tonight, and you don't need to climb or strain, because in this place the mountain seems to do the breathing for us. The air is thin and dry against your face, carrying a faint mineral warmth from vents hidden beneath snow. Above you, the sky is wide and pale, and below it, the Erebus ice towers stand like quiet chimneys made by weather, fire, and time. You can imagine your boots resting lightly on old snow, though we move more by thought than by effort. Around us, Mount Erebus rises from Ross Island in Antarctica, an active volcano wearing a mantle of ice. That is the first strangeness here. A volcano, usually pictured in red heat and dark rock, sits inside one of the coldest landscapes on Earth. And from that meeting come the towers. They are not towers in the human sense. No hand has stacked them. No design has planned their leaning shapes. They grow where warm gas and steam escape from the volcanic ground. And when that vapor touches the polar air, it freezes onto itself, layer after layer, until a hollow column of ice stands over the breathing Earth. You can feel the idea of it before you understand it. The warm invisible air rising through white walls, the cold outside keeping the shape intact. The snow around the Erebus ice towers is not soft in the way lowland snow can be. It is wind-packed, fine-grained, and crisp under an imagined step. The sound of movement is muted, as if the mountain has wrapped every edge in cloth. Even the wind seems to lower its voice here, slipping around the towers in slow ribbons, touching the ice with a dry whisper that barely disturbs the silence. We stand near one of them now, close enough to notice that its surface isn't perfectly smooth. It has ridges, flutes, small shelves, cloudy seams, and places where the ice has taken on a faint blue-gray depth. In softer light, the tower can look almost bone-white. In shadow, it becomes a pale lantern without flame. You might see frost feathers around the opening, delicate as breath made visible. The opening at the top is important, though we don't need to lean over it. Warm vapor rises through that hollow center, carrying volcanic gases from below. The tower is a frozen chimney, but not a dead one. It is part of a living volcanic system, gentle to observe from here, and patient in its own deep way. Beneath the ice, rock is warm. Beneath the rock, the mountain remembers fire. This is why the Erebus ice towers feel so strange. They are made by opposites that do not cancel each other out. Heat doesn't simply melt the ice away, and cold doesn't silence the volcano. Instead, the two hold a careful balance, and in that balance a rare landscape appears. You can rest with that thought for a moment, the way the tower rests between warmth and cold. If you listen closely, there may be no grand sound at all, perhaps only a low suggestion from the vent, a soft exhale beneath the crust, or the small brushing of wind over frozen edges. The air smells almost empty, clean in the Antarctic way, but near the fumaroles there can be a faint sharpness, a mineral trace that tells you the mountain below is not asleep. It is simply quiet. Mount Erebus itself is broad and old-feeling, though its geology is alive. It rises more than 12,000 feet above sea level, with a summit crater that holds a rare, persistent lava lake far above the frozen coast. We don't need to go there quickly. Tonight, we stay with the gentler mystery on the flanks of the volcano, where heat moves upward slowly, and cold gives that movement a visible form. The towers can change over seasons and years. Some grow taller as vapor keeps freezing at their rims and inner walls. Some lean, split, collapse, or seal themselves for a while, because ice is always responding to the conditions around it. You can think of them as temporary, but not fragile in a hurried way. Their lives are slow, shaped by breath, temperature, wind, and the steady pulse of the volcanic ground. The light here has a strange patience. It reflects from snow, slides over the pale towers, and gathers faintly in the hollows where blue shadows rest. Your eyes adjust to subtle differences, because there is not much color asking for attention. White becomes many kinds of white. Gray becomes silver, chalk, pearl, and smoke. The whole slope seems to be speaking in soft shades, As we move a little farther along the volcanic ice field, the first tower drifts behind us, and another rises ahead through the pale air. This next shape may be broader at the base, with a narrow throat at the top, like a candle that has been sculpted by cold instead of flame. You can see how the wind has worried one side more than the other. The outer ice records weather, while the inner hollow records warmth. Between those two records, the tower becomes a frozen diary of the mountain's breathing. The science is calm when you let it be calm. A fumarole is simply an opening where volcanic gases and heated water vapor escape. On Mount Erebus, those gases meet air so cold that water vapor deposits as ice, building walls around the vent. Over time, the vent keeps breathing through the structure it has made. The chimney grows because the exhalation continues, and the cold keeps saving each breath. Not every volcano can make something like this. It takes the unusual closeness of volcanic heat, polar cold, and persistent gas flow. It takes a landscape where snow and ice can remain, where temperatures stay low enough for vapor to freeze, and where heat is present, but not so uncontrolled that it destroys every delicate wall. The Erebus ice towers are strange because their conditions are narrow, almost dreamlike in their precision. You can feel that precision in the air around your face. The cold is dry and close, resting on your cheeks like a fine cloth. Yet the vent seems to offer a hidden warmth, not enough to comfort the whole body, but enough to remind you of another world below. There is cold outside, warmth inside, and between them a white boundary you could almost call listening. Inside some of these towers, the ice may be layered and translucent, built from vapor freezing and refreezing in changing conditions. The hollow passage is a throat for the mountain. Gas rises, moisture freezes, and tiny crystals become part of the wall. Nothing needs to rush. The tower doesn't appear in a single event. It gathers itself from countless small moments, each one almost too quiet to notice. This is one of the kinder ways to think about geology. Much of the planet is made by repetition. One grain settles, one mineral precipitates, one breath freezes, one current lays down silt. Here, one rising plume of vapor meets one interval of cold air, and then another, and then another. You and I can drift with that rhythm, letting the mind loosen around the slowness. There may be ice caves beneath some fumarolic fields where warm air has carved hollows under snow and ice. These spaces can have ceilings crusted with frost and walls shaped by vapor. We won't enter them in a dramatic way. We simply notice that the towers above and the cavities below belong to the same conversation. Warmth rises, ice answers. The mountain makes rooms from its own breath. Around us, the landscape remains spare. There are no trees, no mossy banks, no bird song in the ordinary sense. The quiet is larger than absence. It has texture, it has weight, it sits against the ears like deep water. And if you have ever been in a snowfield after wind has passed, you know how silence can feel almost visible. And as we follow the field of towers across the frozen shoulder of Erebus, the strangeness becomes less like a puzzle and more like a lullaby. You begin to notice that every tower has a slightly different posture. One stands upright, narrow and pale, with a dark little mouth at the top. Another bends gently as though listening to the wind. Another has broken and regrown, leaving rough edges where vapor has continued to freeze around an opening. They are geological forms, but they have the still variety of living things. We should be careful with that feeling, because the towers are not alive in the way a seal or a lichen is alive. Still, they change, and they respond, and they keep a kind of record. Temperature shifts change their growth. Wind shapes their surfaces. Gas flow feeds them from below. Snowfall buries their bases and softens their outlines. Their being is a process, not an object. On Mount Erebus, the deep source of heat comes from magma beneath the volcano. That heat warms rock and water, and gases find their way upward through cracks. The gases can include water vapor, carbon dioxide, sulfur compounds, and other volcanic traces, though from where we rest, they remain mostly invisible. What we see is the water made solid, the breath turned white, the hidden interior written into ice. The towers stand in a world where liquid water is uncommon on the surface, yet water is everywhere in frozen form. Snowfields, glaciers, rime, frost and vapor all belong to the same cycle. Here, water doesn't rush in streams for long. It holds still. It clings to cold air. It becomes architecture. You can feel how strange that is, and how peaceful, as if motion itself has chosen to slow down. The light begins to tilt. In Antarctica, light can behave differently from the light we know in gentler latitudes. It can linger low for a long time, spreading across snow without the quick drop of evening. Shadows stretch softly from the towers, blue at their edges, and the ice seems to gather a faint inner glow. You may find your breathing matching the length of that light. There is no need to name every feature quickly. The mind can rest on one rim of frost, one seam of cloudy ice, one little plume rising and vanishing above a vent. The vapor may appear only briefly, like a pale thought leaving the mountain. Then it is gone into the cold. Some of it joins the air. Some of it becomes part of the tower. The Erebus ice towers are strange partly because they show a hidden exchange so clearly. Most of the time, the deep earth is concealed. We walk over it and forget its warmth. Here, the mountain reveals its interior in a quiet language, not by spilling brightness across the snow, but by lifting vapor into freezing air. It is a gentle signature of fire beneath ice. You might imagine placing a hand near the outer wall, feeling cold first, always cold, because the tower belongs to the Antarctic air. But inside, warmth moves upward in a narrow stream. The two temperatures almost touch. They are separated by ice that both protects and records the meeting. This is the kind of paradox the body understands before words do. As we drift onward, the towers gather behind us like pale watchers, and the slope opens toward wider snow and dark volcanic rock. Here the ground itself tells part of the story. Mount Erebus is not a smooth white mound. It is a volcano with ridges, lava flows, scoria, ash, and dark rock partly covered by ice and snow. Where the black volcanic surface shows through, it holds the light differently. Snow reflects, rock absorbs. The contrast makes the white towers seem even more unlikely, as if they have risen from the edge of shadow. Volcanic rock can be rough and porous, made from material that cooled after eruption, or settled from explosive activity in earlier times. On Erebus, the dark geology gives the snowfield a quiet depth. The mountain is not only a frozen place, it is layered with past eruptions, slow cooling, chemical change, and the constant work of wind. The ice towers belong to that larger, older body. You can see why they might seem almost sculptural from a distance. They stand upright in a landscape that has few vertical forms. In many icy places, the world spreads horizontally in sheets, plains, shelves, and drifts. But here the fumaroles build upward. The volcano breathes through columns. The white shapes lift from the ground, and your eye follows them into the thin Antarctic sky. Yet their height is not the point. Their quietness is. A tower can be only a few feet tall and still hold the same mystery. It is the process that matters, the continual rising of warm vapor through cold air. It is the way the earth keeps speaking in a place that seems, at first glance, almost entirely still. The mountain whispers through ice. The wind may bring a faint, dry sting to your lips. It may carry tiny crystals that tap against your jacket or vanish against your skin. There is little scent except cold, salt carried from distant seas, and that thin volcanic trace near the vents. The sound remains sparse. If there is a plume, it doesn't roar. It breathes, and then the wider silence gathers over it again. In warmer volcanic regions, fumaroles can hiss through bare rock, steaming in damp air, staining the ground with minerals. On Erebus, the same idea is transformed by the Antarctic atmosphere. The steam becomes structure. The gases pass through white chimneys. The harshness often associated with volcanic terrain is softened into pale forms that look almost asleep, even while they are being made. This doesn't mean the process is delicate in every way. The chemistry beneath it is powerful. The heat comes from real magma. The gases come from a deep volcanic system. The cold belongs to one of Earth's most severe climates. But the place we are holding in our attention tonight is not loud. It is immense and measured, and its power has slowed into a shape we can contemplate without fear. You can let that be comforting. Strange things do not have to be alarming. A landscape can be unfamiliar and still be restful. The Erebus ice towers show us that the world has quiet inventions, forms that arise where ordinary categories fail. Fire and ice, breath and stone, vapor and wall, all share the same slope under the same patient sky. Below the next rise, where the snow smooths over darker volcanic ground, the towers become fewer, and each one feels more solitary. We move toward one standing apart from the others, its base half buried by drifted snow. The side facing the wind is polished and worn. The sheltered side carries softer frost, a fine crust that catches light like powdered glass. Near the top, the opening is dark, not because it is frightening, but because the hollow inside holds shadow. The shadow makes the ice around it seem brighter. If you look gently, you can see how the tower's shape depends on invisible flow. Rising gas warms the inside. Cold air sculpts the outside. Wind removes crystals from one edge and deposits them on another. Snow gathers where the moving air slows. No single force is in charge for long. The tower is an agreement among many quiet forces, each one taking its turn. That is part of why the Erebus ice towers are so strange. They are not simply frozen steam, and they are not simply weathered ice. They are a meeting place between atmospheric physics and volcanic geology. Their walls grow by deposition, where vapor becomes solid without first becoming liquid. Their surfaces change by sublimation, wind erosion, and new frost. They are both chimney and weather record. You don't need to hold every term tightly. Let the words pass like slow currents. Deposition means the vapor joins the ice. Sublimation means ice returns directly to vapor. Between those two changes, the tower can gain and lose itself without melting in the familiar way. It can breathe in shape as well as in air, shifting quietly through the season. The cold here is not wet. It is clean and dry, and it seems to sharpen distance. A tower farther away may look close because the air holds so little haze. The snow underfoot is not shining with meltwater. It is matte, pale, and firm. When wind passes over it, a veil of crystals can skim the surface, low and fine, like smoke made of ice. There is life on Mount Erebus, but not in the lush way of reefs, forests, or tidal pools. Around the ice towers, life is sparse, hidden, and careful. Microbial communities can exist in volcanic soils and warm fumarolic environments, finding small niches where heat, moisture, and chemistry allow them to persist. We don't need to magnify them into spectacle. Their quiet survival is enough. Think of tiny organisms in sheltered places, not calling attention to themselves, not decorating the landscape, simply using what the mountain offers. A little warmth, a little moisture, a chemical gradient, a protected surface beneath ice. In a place that seems empty to our eyes, life may be working at a scale where patience is everything. You and I can honor that by staying slow. The towers, then, are not just shapes. They are signs of hidden habitats. Warm vapor can create ice caves and fumarolic pockets, places where the climate differs from the open slope. The outer world may be bitterly cold and dry, while inside a vent-formed hollow, moisture and warmth linger. The mountain makes small rooms in the cold, and sometimes life finds the edges of those rooms. This thought softens the landscape even more. The strangeness is not only that fire makes ice towers, it is that in one of Earth's most remote frozen places, warmth rises through secret passages, making shelter without intention. The planet doesn't need to be kind in a human way to offer refuge. It only needs to be varied, and here its variation is deep. And as the solitary tower fades behind us, we follow the faint line of vents toward a quieter part of the slope, where the mountain's breath feels slower still. The air seems to grow thinner here, not because we are climbing quickly, but because attention itself becomes more delicate on the upper slopes of Mount Erebus. You notice the spaces between the towers first, the wide snowfields where nothing rises at all. Then the next pale chimney appears, almost shyly, at the edge of your sight. The Erebus ice towers do this again and again, arriving quietly from a landscape that looks too still to be making anything new. We keep our pace unhurried, letting the white ground extend around us in all directions. The snow has a dry, granular feel, and the wind presses it into faint waves. Each ripple catches light on one side and shadow on the other, like a frozen tide. You can almost hear the surface settling under the weather, though the sound is small enough to feel imagined. The tower ahead has a low collar of snow around its base, where drifting crystals have gathered through many wind shifts. Its wall rises from that collar with a rough, lumpy grace. Some parts are opaque, clouded by bubbles and frost. Other places hold a faint blue depth, especially where the ice is thick and clean. The whole form feels slowly assembled, as if built by breath after breath during long polar nights. What makes the Erebus ice towers so strange is not only their shape, but their patience in such an exposed place. Most things here are reduced by wind, scoured smooth, or buried. These towers are being worn and made at the same time. The fumarole underneath keeps feeding vapor upward, while the Antarctic air keeps taking from the surface. You and I can rest inside that balance without needing to solve it too quickly. Warm vapor rising through a vent carries water in a form the eye barely sees. When it reaches the cold tower wall or the air at the opening, that vapor can freeze directly into ice crystals. This is deposition, and it is one of the quiet engines of the towers. You don't see a stream pouring or a spring flowing. You see the result of invisible moisture turning itself into architecture. The inner wall may be warmer than the outer wall, and the difference matters. Inside, vapor moves through the hollow like breath in a throat. Outside, wind and cold surround the tower with an almost absolute stillness. Between those conditions, ice thickens, thins, softens, hardens, seals, breaks, and opens again. The tower is never as still as it looks. If you were to listen with your whole body, rather than only your ears, you might sense the mountain's deep warmth beneath the frozen crust. It does not arrive as heat against the skin everywhere. It is more like a hidden fact underfoot. Snow covers it. Ice translates it. A pale chimney gives it shape. Mount Erebus keeps its fire far below, and the Erebus ice towers make that fire gentle enough to see. A little farther on, the slope tilts, and the wind moves across it with a smoother sound. We are still above the ordinary world, high on Ross Island, with the great Antarctic emptiness spreading beyond the mountain. The sea ice lies far away in thought, bright and flat around the island's dark volcanic mass. Up here, the ice towers feel like messages sent from the interior of the earth into a sky of cold silence. The tower nearest us may have grown over a vent that has shifted its flow more than once. You can imagine one side sealing as frost thickened, then another side opening where the gas found an easier path. Ice is obedient to temperature, but vapor is searching and light. It follows cracks, gaps, and pressure differences. The result is a shape that seems almost intentional, though it is only physics moving slowly. Sometimes a fumarolic ice tower can lean because wind builds one side more than another, or because warmth inside undermines part of the structure. Sometimes the top rim grows like a lip, with frost feathers arranged around the opening. Sometimes the tower becomes squat and broad, less like a spire than a frozen mound with a hidden chamber. The Erebus ice towers don't repeat themselves exactly, and that variation is part of their strangeness. You may notice that we keep returning to the word breath. It is the closest soft word for what the mountain is doing. The vent exhales, the cold receives. The tower forms around the passage, yet this breath is not like ours, quick and kneading. It is geological breath, loosened from deep heat, slowed by stone, and made visible only when it meets the polar air. The surface of the ice can hold tiny crystals that look like fur from a distance. Close by, they are more like branching stars, grown from vapor in still pockets near the wall. Each crystal has followed the rules of water and temperature. Each one is small enough to disappear on your glove, yet together they soften the tower's outline. The whole chimney wears a coat of frost, This is where the place begins to feel less like a single curiosity and more like an ecosystem of conditions. The towers belong to the vents belong to the volcano belongs to the ice, and the ice belongs to the cold air flowing over Antarctica. Nothing here is isolated. Even in a landscape that appears bare, relation is everywhere, only quieter than we expect. You can let your breathing settle into that idea. The Erebus ice towers are not decorations placed on Mount Erebus. They are conversations between the mountain and the atmosphere. Their forms depend on weather, gas chemistry, snow accumulation, temperature gradients, and time. This is why they are so difficult to categorize at a glance. They are landforms, ice forms, volcanic features, and weather made visible in one place. As we move lower along the vent field in our imagined path, the snow seems to hush even more around the bases of the towers. A faint plume rises from one opening, almost the same color as the air. It bends with the wind and disappears before it has gone far. You can watch it vanish without urgency, as if it is teaching the eye how to release things. The gases rising from Erebus come from a volcanic system that remains active beneath the ice. Deep below, molten rock releases volatile compounds as pressure changes and heat moves through fractures. By the time those gases reach the surface, they may have traveled through a complicated path of rock, ice, and vapor-filled spaces. What we see at the tower is the final quiet gesture of that journey, the exhale after a long ascent. In other places, such gases might stain rocks yellow, white, or orange with minerals, or carry a smell strong enough to announce themselves from a distance. Here the cold transforms the expression. Ice becomes the dominant surface. Frost hides the harsher textures. Snow reduces contrast. The volcanic system is still there, but it speaks through white walls and shadowed hollows rather than through open, steaming ground. You are allowed to find this comforting. The world often holds contradictions without needing them to become conflict. Fire and ice share one mountain. Warmth creates frozen towers. Emptiness shelters hidden microbial life. Silence contains movement. The Erebus ice towers remind us that strangeness can be calm, and that not every mystery asks to be chased. Some mysteries only ask us to sit beside them. The wind turns slightly, and for a moment, the plume from the nearest tower brushes sideways along the rim before lifting away. The vapor looks like a pale scarf loosening from the opening. It carries a faint mineral scent, thin and passing. The cold air takes it apart. You feel the stillness return to your shoulders, heavy in the most peaceful way, as if the mountain has placed a blanket of quiet over the slope. Beyond the vent field, the shape of Mount Erebus remains broad and monumental. Its upper slopes lead toward the summit crater, where a rare lava lake has persisted in the volcanic system through many observations. We don't need to stare into that heat tonight. It is enough to know that it exists above and within the mountain's story, a source of deep warmth that helps explain these pale towers lower on the frozen ground. That contrast is one reason scientists have returned to Erebus with such care. A volcano in Antarctica offers a natural laboratory where heat, gas, ice, and extreme cold interact openly. The Erebus ice towers become markers of that interaction. They show where the underground system reaches the surface. They also change with conditions, giving patient observers a way to read subtle shifts in the mountain's breathing. But we are not here as hurried investigators. We are here as quiet company. You can imagine standing with a notebook closed, not writing yet, just noticing how the tower's shadow lies across the snow. The shadow is blue at its center and lighter at its edge. The ice wall has small pits where crystals have vanished. The vent gives off a barely visible thread of vapor. The tower's hollowness matters to its mood. A solid spire of ice would feel different, more like a frozen monument. This is a chimney, a passage. It has an inside made by moving air. That hidden interior gives the form a sense of listening. When you look at it, you are also looking towards something you cannot see, a warm route through cold matter. Some of the ice caves associated with Erebus fumaroles can contain remarkable frost formations. growing in sheltered cavities where vapor freezes onto ceilings and walls. These underground spaces may be warmer and more humid than the open slope. The ceiling can glitter with crystals. The walls can be sculpted into smooth curves. Beneath the blank white surface, the mountain may hold rooms of secret ice. We do not enter quickly, and we do not make the caves dramatic. It is enough to picture their quiet interiors. There may be a low ceiling of ice, a floor of snow or volcanic sediment, and a faint passage where warm vapor moves. Light from outside would dim almost immediately. The air would feel closer there, still cold but less exposed, touched by the mountain's hidden warmth. In such places, life may find tiny chances. Microbes do not need scenery, and they do not need abundance in the way larger animals do. They need usable energy, water, and conditions they can tolerate. Around volcanic vents beneath Antarctic ice, these ingredients may gather in small, protected patches. You can think of life here as a whisper that stays close to the ground, steady and modest. This makes the Erebus ice towers stranger still. They are visible signs of a hidden gradient where conditions change from the lethal cold of open exposure to warmer, wetter pockets shaped by volcanic heat. The surface may look empty, but emptiness is not the same as simplicity. Under the snow, temperature, gas, and moisture can vary over short distances. The mountain is full of quiet thresholds. We pause by another tower whose top has widened into an irregular crown. The rim is crusted with frost so fine it looks almost soft enough to brush away. The side facing us has a long vertical seam, perhaps where a crack opened and refroze. Light enters that seam differently, giving it a bluish depth. You can rest your gaze there, on one small line of blue in a white world. The blue of ice has its own slow explanation. Thick, clean ice absorbs longer wavelengths of light more strongly, allowing blue light to travel and return to the eye. In these towers, cloudiness, bubbles, frost, and impurities all change the color. Some sections appear milky, some appear gray. Some hold a faint glacial blue, especially in thicker or denser places. The tower becomes a quiet study in light. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can still feel the scene. Cold on your face, dry air in your nose, a faint sulfur mineral trace near the vent, snow firmness beneath your feet, wind pressing against one side of your coat. These are small sensations, but together they keep us anchored beside the Erebus ice towers, where the mind can drift without floating away entirely. There is something especially restful about landscapes that are made by slow exchange. A waterfall has a sound that fills the body. A forest has motion in leaves and scent in soil. Here, the exchange is quieter, but no less complete. The volcano gives warmth and vapor. The atmosphere gives cold. The ice accepts both. The result stands in silence, a pale shape with a breathing center. As we continue, the towers seem to arrange themselves along invisible lines of weakness in the ground. Fumaroles often follow fractures because gases use cracks as pathways through rock and ice. The surface pattern may hint at deeper structure. A line of towers can mark a hidden seam where heat finds the surface. You and I can follow that seam in thought, tracing the mountain's interior without digging into it. This is one of the strange gifts of Erebus. It lets the unseen become visible in a form gentle enough for long looking. A crack in rock becomes a vent becomes a plume becomes a tower becomes a marker on a white slope. The whole sequence is calm and legible if you give it enough time. Of course, the towers do not last forever. Ice never promises permanence, even in Antarctica. A change in gas flow can starve a tower of vapor. A storm can erode its sides. A warm period, relative to the cold around it, can weaken its structure. A sealed vent may open elsewhere. The Erebus ice towers are strange partly because they seem ancient, while many of their individual forms may be temporary. That temporary nature doesn't make them less meaningful. It may make them easier to rest with. They remind us that a thing can be brief and still belong to deep time. The process is older than any single tower. The mountain keeps breathing. The cold keeps answering. One chimney falls, another grows, and the field remains a slow conversation across years, seasons, and storms. The snow under the next tower has been stained faintly in places by mineral dust from volcanic rock. It is not bright color, only a subdued grayness at the surface, like ash remembered under frost. The tower itself rises pale above it. This small contrast tells the whole story again. Dark rock below, white ice above, warm vapor between them, and cold air holding everything in a patient frame. You can imagine the sun lowering until the tower's shadow lengthens across the slope. In polar regions, the change may be prolonged and dreamlike, with light sliding sideways for hours. Edges soften. Frost catches gold for a little while, then returns to blue. The opening at the top grows darker. The plume, if one is visible, becomes a faint moving brightness against the dimmer sky. We walk without urgency into that lengthening light. There is no destination that matters more than the noticing. The Erebus ice towers are not explained once and then left behind. They keep offering the same mystery from slightly different angles. Each tower says, in its own still way, that heat can be quiet, cold can be creative, and a mountain can build with breath. Near the base of one tower, a low opening in the snow suggests a connection to a cavity below. We stay outside, letting imagination move where the body does not need to go. Inside, warm vapor may have sculpted a chamber under the ice, rounding the ceiling and glazing the walls with frost. The air in such a space might be close, damp, mineral, and still, with the outside wind reduced to a far murmur. Ice caves in fumarolic regions can be unstable, changing as heat and cold alter their walls. But tonight we hold them gently, as hidden forms rather than places to enter. They help us understand the towers above. The chimney is only the visible part. Below it, the mountain may have shaped a larger hollow, an under-snow room where gas gathers and escapes. The tower is the chimney of that quiet chamber. This connection between surface and subsurface makes Erebus feel layered in a way ordinary sight cannot capture. There is the sky layer, thin and cold. There is the snow layer, bright and wind-shaped. There is the ice layer, hollowed and built by vapor. There is the volcanic rock layer, dark and warm in places. Below all of it, deeper heat persists, patient and mostly unseen. You may feel yourself settling as we name those layers slowly. Sky, snow, ice, rock, heat, not as a list that wakes the mind, but as a descending thought, each layer resting on the next. The Erebus ice towers rise through them like pale signs, showing where the deeper layers have found a way to speak upward into the cold. The strangeness also comes from scale. The mountain is enormous, part of a volcanic island in the remote Antarctic, and yet the tower may ask you to look at a rim of frost no wider than your hand. Deep time and tiny crystals share the same object. You can stand before one chimney and think of magma, atmosphere, microbiology, and wind, then return to the simple beauty of ice forming a curled edge. This kind of attention is good for sleep. It gives the mind something steady to hold, but nothing sharp to grip. The facts are real, and the landscape is specific, yet the rhythm is slow enough to let thought loosen. Mount Erebus does not hurry. The towers do not hurry. The vapor rises at its own rate, and the cold receives it without impatience. As we drift farther across the slope, the view opens again, and the towers appear more widely spaced, each surrounded by its own quiet weather. The next tower is lower than the last, almost mound-like, with a small vent at one side rather than the very top. It exhales near the snow surface, and a thin crust has grown around the opening. You can see how such a form might someday build upward if the flow continues, or it may remain low, shaped more by wind than by height. The Erebus ice towers include these beginning forms, these half-towers, these almost chimneys. There is tenderness in seeing a landform in the middle of becoming. We often imagine geology as finished, because cliffs and mountains outlast us so easily. But here, The process feels immediate enough to notice. Vapor is rising now. Frost is growing now. Wind is editing the wall now. The tower's future is not separate from this quiet moment. Water is the great translator here. In one state, it rises unseen as vapor. In another, it becomes frost, rime, and ice. It can disappear again into the air by sublimation. It can thicken into a wall without ever flowing as liquid. The same substance crosses boundaries so gently that the landscape seems to be made of breath, remembering how to be solid. The Antarctic cold is essential, but it is not merely an absence of warmth. It is an active sculptor. It determines how fast vapor freezes, how long snow remains, how brittle the tower becomes, and how sharply frost grows. Cold gives the towers their bodies. Without it, the fumarole would simply steam into open air, and the strange white chimneys of Erebus would not stand. At the same time, warmth is essential too. Without volcanic heat, there would be no rising vapor, no hollow chimney, no hidden ice cave, no mineral breath threading through the snow. The towers need both conditions. They are born in the boundary between them. You can feel why this boundary feels peaceful tonight, because it is not a clash in our telling. It is a meeting. The wind softens and returns, softens and returns. Its sound along the tower wall is almost like cloth drawn over a table. Snow grains lift and settle in low motion. A plume bends, thins, and disappears. The scent of cold dominates everything, but now and then the vent adds a dry volcanic trace, a reminder that this white landscape is connected to dark, heated stone. From a distance, the Erebus ice towers can look almost like ruins, but that impression belongs to us, not to them. They are not remnants of a vanished builder. They are builders of themselves. Each wall grows from the process passing through it. Each opening remains because vapor continues to move. A tower is not a leftover. It is an ongoing act of the mountain. This is why photographs of the towers can feel so uncanny. The mind recognizes a chimney, a column, perhaps even a small tower from a village or a castle. But the material and setting refuse that familiarity. There is no village here. There is no smoke from a hearth. There is only volcanic vapor in Antarctic air, making forms that resemble human structures by accident. Accidental resemblance can be soothing when we let it remain accidental. The world does not need to mean us in order to comfort us. The Erebus ice towers were not made for eyes, yet they reward looking. They were not made for rest, yet their slow shapes invite it. They stand outside our purposes, and that can be a relief, especially late at night when the mind is tired of purpose. You can picture lowering yourself onto a safe patch of snow in thought, wrapped in warmth, watching one tower breathe from a little distance. The plume rises, thins, and folds into the sky. The wall holds steady. The light changes almost imperceptibly. Nothing asks for action. Even curiosity becomes slow, like a lantern turned down until only a soft circle remains. The science continues under that circle of attention. Gas escaping from magma can move through fractures because pressure below is greater than pressure above. Heat keeps water vapor from freezing too soon inside the vent. At the surface, the temperature drops abruptly, and ice begins to accumulate. Over time, the vent may insulate itself with the very tower it creates, changing the flow within its own walls. Insulation is another gentle paradox here. Ice is cold, but it can protect warmth by slowing the loss of heat. Snow does this too, trapping air in small spaces. A fumarolic ice structure can help maintain a warmer inner passage than the open air outside. The tower is made by cold, yet it can shelter the warm breath that keeps making it. You might feel that idea settling into the body. The outside can be cold, and still there can be a protected passage within. A boundary can be frozen, and still something warm can move through it. The landscape offers no lesson loudly, but it allows a quiet comparison. The Erebus ice towers hold an interior softness inside an exterior shaped by weather. As night or polar twilight deepens in our imagined scene, the tower's outline becomes less detailed. The rim blurs into the sky, the base dissolves into snow. Only the faintest vapor tells you where the opening is. The cold presses closer against the cheeks, and the world seems to narrow to breath, ice, and the pale slope beneath us. The quiet becomes almost complete. Yet Erebus is not empty above or below. It is connected to the wider Antarctic system, to ice shelves, sea ice, winds, storms, and the southern ocean beyond Ross Island. Air masses move across the continent and over the volcano. Snow arrives from weather that began far away. Volcanic gases rise from a source far below. The tower is local, but its making belongs to a whole planet. That connection can make the scene feel larger without making it louder. You are standing beside a single frozen chimney, and at the same time, you are touching the circulation of air, the water cycle, the rock cycle, and the deep release of Earth's heat. Everything has slowed enough to be held in one image. A pale tower on a frozen volcano becomes a meeting place for immense quiet systems. The Erebus ice towers are also strange because they are both fragile and resilient. A wall of ice can crack, melt, sublimate, or collapse. A storm can alter it, but the process that forms the tower may continue after damage, rebuilding around the vent. The individual shape is vulnerable. The pattern is persistent. You can let that difference rest in you, a soft distinction between form and process. We come to another cluster now. 3 towers close enough that their shadows overlap across the snow. One is narrow and tapered. One is blunt and open. One has a broken side where the inner hollow is partly visible. The cluster feels almost like a small gathering, though each tower is only following its own vent. Their nearness suggests fractures below, a shared zone where gases find several paths upward. The air among them feels slightly different in imagination, touched by multiple warm exhalations. Not warm like a room, not warm enough to remove the cold, but varied. One pocket of air carries a faint mineral smell. Another has a visible wisp. Snow near one opening is crusted differently. Your senses begin to notice gradients. The little changes that make this place more complex than a white slope first appears. In such a cluster, the towers may influence one another through wind patterns and drifting snow. A plume from one vent may deposit frost downwind. A tower may shelter snow behind it, building a drift that changes the base of another. The landscape is sparse, but not simple. Even here, forms relate, and you can watch the subtle ways they share the air. The idea of a tower growing from vapor may feel dreamlike, but it follows ordinary physical rules under extraordinary conditions. Water molecules in warm gas move into colder surroundings. They lose energy. They attach to existing ice surfaces. Crystal patterns develop. Wind removes or rearranges the outer layers. The shape evolves. Nothing supernatural is needed, yet the result feels almost beyond ordinary imagination. This is often true of the natural world. The more carefully you understand a strange thing, the more quietly wondrous it becomes. Explanation doesn't take away the feeling, it deepens it. Knowing that the Erebus ice towers grow through deposition, fumarolic flow, and Antarctic cold doesn't make them less beautiful. It lets their beauty settle into the mind with roots. You may notice how slowly your attention moves now. It doesn't leap from tower to tower. It lingers. It traces the rim, follows a frost line, rests on the plume, then returns to the snow at the base. This is the pace the place asks of us. It is not the pace of discovery as conquest. It is the pace of staying near something quiet until it becomes familiar. The cluster recedes behind us, and ahead the slope grows smoother again, with only a few dark rocks showing through the snow. Those rocks remind us that the white surface is a cover, not the whole mountain. Beneath it, volcanic material holds shapes from eruptions, flows, and older surfaces. Some rocks may be warmed from below, while others remain locked in cold. The mountain is a patchwork of thermal conditions. Where warmth reaches the surface without much moisture, the effect may be subtle. Where vapor is abundant and cold air is steady, a tower can grow. This is why the Erebus ice towers appear where they do, not everywhere on the volcano. They require pathways, heat, water vapor, and exposure. They are selective expressions of the mountain, appearing only where the conditions agree. Agreement is a peaceful word for this place. The vent agrees to breathe, the air agrees to freeze, the wind agrees to shape, the snow agrees to hold. Of course, nature does not agree in a human sense, but the metaphor is soft enough for night. It helps us feel the harmony of conditions that allows a strange form to stand in the Antarctic light. As we drift through that light, you may imagine the color slowly leaving the world. White becomes gray, gray becomes blue, blue becomes almost black in the hollows. The towers remain pale for a while longer, catching whatever brightness is left. Their openings darken first, their bases vanish next. Finally, only their silhouettes remain, quiet interruptions in the smooth fall of the slope. The cold at this hour feels less like an edge and more like a presence. It surrounds the body evenly, it makes breath visible, it sharpens stars if the sky is clear. In the far distance, the Antarctic horizon may hold a faint glow, but here beside the towers, the world has narrowed into ice, air, and the low whisper of volcanic vapor rising through darkness. Even in darkness, the process continues. The tower does not need daylight to grow. Vapor rises through night as through day. Frost forms where temperature and moisture allow. Wind shapes what it touches. The mountain's deep heat is indifferent to the hour. This is another soothing thing about geology. It works while we sleep, slowly, steadily, without needing our attention. The Erebus ice towers may change slightly by morning, though the change could be too small for one tired pair of eyes to notice. A rim may thicken, a frost feather may lengthen, a small crust may seal and redirect the plume, snow may drift higher against the base. The tower keeps becoming itself, even when the landscape appears still. You can rest with that thought, that becoming does not always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness held long enough for change to accumulate. A sleeping glacier moves. A quiet lake exchanges heat. A desert stone weathers under stars. A fumarolic tower grows in the dark, one invisible breath at a time, while the mountain beneath it keeps its patient fire. Farther down the slope, the air opens again, and we begin to sense the wider shape of Ross Island around Mount Erebus. The island is volcanic, remote, and surrounded by ice-covered seas for much of the year. Erebus is its most active presence, rising above the polar landscape with a summit that has drawn careful attention for generations. But tonight, we stay with the smaller white forms on its flanks. Those forms help make the mountain feel intimate. A summit crater can be too large for the sleepy mind. A lava lake can be too bright, but an ice tower is close enough to imagine calmly. You can stand beside it. You can follow its surface with your eyes. You can understand that it is hollow. The vast volcano becomes approachable through one pale, breathing chimney. That is another reason the Erebus ice towers are so strange. They translate the scale of the volcano into something almost human-sized, without becoming human-made. They are small enough to stand near, and large enough to carry the mountain's story. They give the deep system a gentle doorway into perception. The volcano becomes not only a peak, but a presence beside you. If you imagine placing your ear near the outer wall, not touching, only listening, there may still be almost nothing to hear. Perhaps a soft hiss, perhaps no sound at all. The cold can hide motion. The ice can muffle it. Yet the lack of noise doesn't mean the lack of activity. Beneath the hush, gases move, crystals form, and heat travels upward through rock. This quiet activity is good company for drowsiness. It doesn't demand alertness, it offers continuity. You can let your thoughts rise and fade like the plume, returning whenever they like to the same image. A white tower, a dark vent, a cold slope, a warm breath. Each detail remains simple, but together they form a landscape of deep and careful stillness. The tower's surface, in our dimming light, becomes less like ice and more like moonlit stone. Its roughness softens, the frost feathers blur, the small cracks disappear. What remains is the silhouette and the knowledge of the hollow inside. Sometimes knowing less with the eyes allows the mind to feel more. The tower becomes a calm shape, carrying hidden warmth through the cold. Around the base, snow has collected in crescent drifts. The wind has curved them smoothly, and their edges are thin enough to catch a faint glow. These drifts are not incidental. They show how air moves around the tower. Every obstacle teaches wind a new path. Every path leaves a trace in snow. The Erebus ice towers shape their surroundings even as the surroundings shape them. The same is true below the surface. A vent can alter the temperature of nearby ice and snow. Warm vapor may hollow a cavity. Refreezing may strengthen another section. Gas flow may seek a new route when one becomes blocked. The tower and its hidden chamber form a small system, changing through feedbacks that are gentle to describe but complex in detail. You don't need to follow every feedback. Just feel the looping. Warmth makes a hollow. The hollow channels warmth. Vapor makes ice. Ice guides vapor. Wind shapes the tower. The tower shapes wind. The whole form is a slow loop between earth and air, made visible in white. There is comfort in loops when they move softly and without urgency. As we continue through the fumarole field, the mountain seems to breathe from several places at once. Not loudly, not in a rhythm we can count, but in scattered, patient exhalations. Some vents are visible because towers crown them. Others may be hidden under snow or marked only by subtle crusts. The surface is full of quiet signs, and each sign asks for patience. Patience is perhaps the best way to meet Mount Erebus. The mountain has been built by volcanic activity over long spans of time, shaped by eruption, cooling, erosion, snow, ice and wind. The towers are younger expressions on an older body. They rise and change while the volcano persists beneath them. In their pale walls, short time and deep time touch. This contact between time scales can calm the mind. Human hours soften against volcanic ages. A night's rest fits inside a season. A season fits inside the life of a vent field. The vent field fits inside the longer history of the mountain. You don't need to become small in a frightening way. You can become unburdened, held by something slower than thought. The Erebus ice towers show that even in a severe landscape, beauty can be made through repetition, breath after breath, crystal after crystal, drift after drift. The sentence of the mountain is written without ink, using vapor and frost. It does not need to be read quickly. It can stay open while the listener grows quiet, and still be there when attention returns. We pass another tower with a side that has partially collapsed, revealing the hollow interior like a broken shell. The exposed wall shows thickness, layers, and cloudy ice. The opening inside is shadowed, but not empty. It is a passage for vapor. Around the broken edge, new frost has begun to form, softening the fracture. Even damage becomes part of the continuing shape. This is a gentle way to understand natural change. A break is not always an ending. In a process-built form, a break can redirect growth. The vent may keep exhaling. Frost may seal one edge and widen another. Snow may fill the gap. Wind may round it. Over time, the tower may look whole again, or it may become something different, still belonging to the same slow system. There is no drama in this, only alteration. The landscape doesn't pause to announce it. A tower cracks, a plume shifts, a rim thickens, and the field continues. You and I can let that quiet continuity move through us. The Erebus ice towers do not resist change by staying fixed. They remain themselves by changing with the breath that made them. The air now carries a deeper chill, and the snow has taken on the blue of late light. If stars appear above Erebus, they would seem hard and clear in the dry polar sky. The towers below them would look soft by comparison, pale shapes on a frozen volcanic slope. The contrast between sky sharpness and ice softness makes the place feel suspended, almost outside ordinary time. Even the word strange begins to soften. At first, the Erebus ice towers are strange because they seem unlikely. Later, they are strange because they make sense in a way you couldn't have predicted. They become a quiet answer to a set of conditions: heat below, cold above, vapor between, wind around. Their oddness becomes clarity, and their clarity becomes peaceful. We can stay near that peacefulness as the imagined path bends across another stretch of snow. The next vents are smaller, They're towers no higher than a person in our mind's scale. Some are only rounded cones with openings at the top. Others have jagged rims where frost has grown unevenly. All of them share the same essential gesture, the upward carrying of warmth into the cold. If you were mapping them, you might note their positions, sizes, temperatures, gas compositions, and changes over time. But tonight, the map can remain folded. We are following sensation and science together, not rushing either one. The towers are allowed to be measured and wondered at. They are allowed to be data and dream, mineral fact and sleep image, all at once. The snow beside one small tower has a crust that looks glazed, perhaps shaped by warmth from below and refreezing at the surface. Your imagined step would avoid it, not from fear, but from care. This is a place to move lightly. The ground may hide hollows, the ice may be thin near vents, so we let our attention walk where feet need not, moving with careful quiet. That carefulness suits the mood of the landscape. It keeps us from turning the towers into spectacle. They are not props for adventure. They are natural forms in a remote volcanic field. Beautiful because they are precise and unassuming. Their strangeness does not need exaggeration. The facts are enough, and the facts become softer when spoken slowly. On Mount Erebus, the boundary between surface and interior feels unusually close. The tower stands above the vent, and the vent connects downward through warmer rock. You can look at a white chimney and feel the depth beneath it, not as a drop, but as a hidden continuity. The mountains inside reaches outward through a frozen sleeve. The surface is not a wall, it is a threshold. Thresholds are restful places in sleep narration because they let the mind hover, not fully outside, not fully inside, not only cold, not only warm, not only solid, not only vapor. The Erebus ice towers are thresholds made visible. They let us linger between categories without needing to choose, and in that lingering, thought becomes less sharp around the edges. The wind lowers again. The plume from a small vent rises more vertically now, a pale thread lifting into the dim air. It is gone within a few feet, absorbed into the larger cold. You might think of it as the mountains sending up a message that does not need to travel far. Its purpose is fulfilled in the rising, in the freezing, in the brief visibility of breath. Some of that breath becomes part of the rim, some slips away, some may freeze on the inside wall, where the passage is narrow and conditions are right. Over many such breaths, the chimney can thicken or change its diameter. If the opening narrows too much, flow may warm and reshape it, or find another way. The tower's form is a negotiation with motion. Motion here is almost hidden. It doesn't splash or tumble. It doesn't announce itself in bright color. It moves as vapor, heat, crystal growth, wind abrasion, and drifting snow. These are subtle forms of movement, but they are constant enough to build a landscape. The sleep mind can follow them without strain, the way it follows slow waves against a shore. The comparison to waves is only a feeling, because we are far above the sea on an Antarctic volcano. Still, Ross Island sits in a world of ice and ocean, and the mountain rises from that larger polar setting. Far below, sea ice may groan and drift with tides. Up here, the towers answer a different rhythm, the rhythm of volcanic breath meeting frozen air. The Erebus ice towers belong to the atmosphere as much as to the volcano. If humidity, temperature, wind, or pressure changes, their growth changes too. A calm period might allow delicate frost to build. A stronger wind might scour it away. A shift in vent temperature might widen a passage. The tower is therefore a weather listener, holding records in a language of shape and texture. You and I listen with it for a while. The air moves, the plume bends, snow grains slide along the surface with a faint sand-like whisper. The tower remains, but not passively. Its edges are responding even now. A crystal loosens, another crystal forms. The wall gives up and receives at once. The whole scene is balanced on very small exchanges. This balance can feel especially soothing because it asks nothing from us. We don't need to fix the tower, preserve it in our hands, or understand every variable. We can simply witness the meeting of forces. So much of the waking world asks for decisions. Here, Beside the towers of Erebus, attention can become receptive. It can watch without choosing. As the slope broadens, the towers become scattered points behind us and beside us, pale against the dim snow. The mountain's summit is a darker presence above, still holding its deep activity. Somewhere higher, heat is more open. Here, heat is veiled. The veiling matters. It turns volcanic power into frost, plume, and chimney, into forms gentle enough for the edge of sleep. The Erebus ice towers are not the only strange ice features on Earth, but they have a rare combination of setting and cause. Many ice formations grow from freezing water, from dripping, flowing, melting, and refreezing. These grow from vapor over volcanic vents in a polar desert. Their source is breath-like. Their walls are built from the air. That makes them feel almost impossible, though they are completely real. A polar desert may sound contradictory too, but Antarctica is dry in many regions because cold air holds little moisture. Snow can remain for long periods, yet precipitation may be low. Wind redistributes what falls. On Erebus, the dryness helps preserve crisp surfaces and sparse textures. The landscape is white, but not lush with snow in the way a stormy mountain forest might be. Dry cold has a particular sensation. It enters the nose sharply. It makes sound seem smaller. It leaves the skin aware of every exposed place. In the imagination, you can feel it without discomfort, because we are wrapped in the safety of listening. The cold becomes atmosphere rather than hardship, a clear medium through which the towers stand in patient detail. At one vent, the plume may carry enough warmth to keep the opening clear, while ice builds around it. This is another small paradox. The same vapor that creates the tower also prevents the passage from sealing completely. At least while flow remains steady, creation and maintenance happen together. The tower's hollow center is preserved by the breath that thickens its walls. Over time, changes in gas flow can alter that relationship. If flow weakens, the opening may narrow or close. If flow strengthens, ice may melt or sublimate from the inside, enlarging the passage. If wind changes, deposition may favor one side. The tower is a record of fluctuating conditions. It is not a static sculpture. It is a slow instrument, played by heat and cold. You can imagine scientists returning to the same tower after months or years, noticing that it has grown, tilted, opened, collapsed, or been replaced. Their measurements would matter, because these features can tell us about volcanic degassing and the thermal structure of the surface. But for our purposes tonight, the important thing is the patience required to notice change in a quiet landform. Patience changes the observer too. The longer you stay with the Erebus ice towers, the less they feel like oddities, and the more they feel like companions of the mountain. They stand where conditions allow them. They change when conditions change. They reveal only a little at a time. You may begin to feel that this is the kindest pace for any deep landscape. The sky has darkened further now, and the snow gives back a faint, low glow. The towers are pale silhouettes. Their shadows have merged with the general blue of the slope. A plume from one chimney catches light for a moment, then fades into air. The scene becomes almost monochrome, but not empty. It is full of temperature, texture, breath, and time. We move through it as if floating, though the place is solid under our imagined feet. The body in bed may feel heavier now, more settled. The mind can rest on the thought of the tower's hollow center, a calm passage through ice. Every inhale and exhale can match the mountain in miniature, though ours is warm and brief, and its is deep and slow. There is no need to compare too strongly. We only let the resemblance soften us. Breath leaves the body. Breath leaves the mountain. In cold air, breath appears and disappears. On Erebus, some of that breath remains, turned into ice around a vent. The Erebus ice towers are like frozen evidence that even the invisible can gather form if conditions are patient enough. A final tower in this stretch rises with a narrow, crooked shape, leaning slightly downhill. Its top is uneven, one side higher than the other, and the opening faces partly away from the wind. The surface carries small vertical grooves where crystals have sublimated, or where melt-free processes have etched the wall. It looks weathered but still active, still holding its quiet passage. We pause near it, because pausing is the natural way to understand such a form. The tower does not explain itself in a single glance. It asks you to notice the lean, then the rim, then the snowdrift, then the faint plume, then the dark rock just showing through at the base. Each detail adds another layer to the same soft question. How does fire become ice? The answer remains gentle. Fire does not become ice directly. Heat releases vapor. Vapor meets cold. Cold grows crystals. Crystals build walls. Walls guide vapor. The chimney stands. This sequence is simple enough for a drowsy mind, yet deep enough to keep wonder alive. The Erebus ice towers are strange because they let a chain of invisible processes become one visible, quiet shape. As we leave this crooked tower behind, the vent field seems to thin, and the snow opens into a broader plain of pale volcanic slope. The mountain's breath is still present, but more widely spaced now. Each plume feels more solitary. Each tower stands with more silence around it. We move into that wider quiet, following the hush between vents, where the ground holds its warmth underneath, and the night settles over the ice without haste. The wider quiet has its own texture, and as we move through it, the Erebus ice towers feel less like isolated curiosities and more like rare openings in a frozen skin. The snow between them is broad and almost unmarked. The wind has combed it into low ridges that run across the slope with patient regularity. You can imagine the surface faintly squeaking under careful steps, while the mountain holds its warmer secret below. In this broader place, the strangeness becomes spatial. A tower may stand alone for a long distance, then another appears where the venting finds a new route upward. Each pale shape marks a hidden connection between the volcanic interior and the polar air. We do not see the fractures beneath the snow. We do not see the warm passages in rock. We only see the ice responding above them, like a quiet sign written in frost. The ground beneath Mount Erebus is not uniform, even when snow makes it look smooth. Heat moves unevenly through stone, and gases travel through cracks, pores, and old pathways left by earlier volcanic activity. Some routes close, others open. Some carry more vapor, others carry less. The Erebus ice towers rise where those hidden routes meet conditions that let the vapor freeze into a chimney instead of vanishing into air. You might feel how restful it is to let the unseen remain partly unseen. We are not digging into the mountain tonight. We are reading the surface slowly, with enough science to understand and enough wonder to keep the place spacious. A tower here, a plume there, a drift curled around a base, a faint mineral smell passing through the cold. These are small facts, but they make the world feel deep. The slope ahead is dimmer now, washed in a blue-gray light that seems to come from the snow itself. The sky above Erebus is thin and enormous. If clouds pass, they move like pale veils across the high air. If the sky is clear, the first stars seem cold enough to ring. Beneath them, the towers hold their forms without brightness, their white walls becoming soft silhouettes against the shadowed volcano. In this hour, you begin to understand why the Erebus ice towers can feel almost otherworldly. It isn't because they belong outside Earth. It is because they reveal Earth in a combination we rarely meet: volcano and ice, desert and snow, warm vapor and dry cold. A living geologic system speaking through fragile frozen chimneys. The result is unfamiliar, but not unfriendly, and we can stay with that unfamiliarity gently. The tower nearest us now has a surface roughened by many cycles of growth and loss. Some ridges look wind-carved. Some knobs may have formed where vapor froze thickly around small irregularities. The tower's top is darker than the sides, because the hollow opening gathers shadow. A faint plume rises, bends and disappears. You can watch it as long as you like, and it will never ask you to hurry. The plume is a reminder that gases are still moving from warmer places below. Volcanic gases can be chemically varied, and their proportions can tell scientists something about the state of the magma and hydrothermal system. But here, beside the tower, the chemistry enters our attention softly. It is a trace in the air, a barely perceptible sharpness, a sign that the white chimney has roots in dark, heated stone. There is a kindness in the way the cold makes the invisible visible. In warmer air, the vapor might only shimmer and vanish. Here, it condenses, freezes, and leaves a record. The Erebus ice towers are therefore acts of revelation. They show where the mountain breathes. They show how water changes state. They show how an extreme environment can make a subtle process visible enough to stand beside. The snow at the base has collected in layered drifts, each one formed by a slightly different wind. One drift curls behind the tower like a frozen wave. Another lies thin against the windward side, scoured and hardened. You can sense the wind's history in these shapes. The tower changes the air around it, and the air writes those changes into snow, over and over, with quiet precision. If you let your attention drop lower, you can picture what may be happening beneath the snow. Warm vapor rises into a cavity, melting or sublimating ice in some places, while freezing in others. The cavity might have smooth walls, or rough frost, or patches of exposed volcanic material. It might be small enough to imagine easily, or part of a larger network of hollows. The tower is only the visible roofline of a more hidden world. That hidden world is one reason scientists think carefully about fumarolic ice caves on Erebus. They are places where geology, climate, and possible biology overlap in rare ways. Warmth and moisture gather under ice in an otherwise severe landscape. Microbes may find niches there, using chemical energy and small pockets of more favorable conditions. Life doesn't need to be dramatic to be remarkable. For the sleepy mind, it is enough to imagine tiny life resting in hidden warmth, far from green fields and sunlit ponds. It may live slowly, in films, grains, or microscopic communities, where moisture touches mineral surfaces. It may be sparse. It may be difficult to detect. Still, the idea adds softness to the towers. They are not just strange structures. They may be signs of shelter, however small. The wind moves again, and fine snow slides along the ground in a thin, low sheet. It looks like mist, but it is made of crystals. The sound is dry and faint. It gathers against ridges, skims past exposed stones, and curls around the tower's base. You can feel the cold of that movement without discomfort, because we are observing from the quiet warmth of a listening mind. The Erebus ice towers endure this constant abrasion. Their outer surfaces lose ice to wind and sublimation, while their inner surfaces may gain ice from vapor. This makes them seem paradoxical, as if they are being erased and written at the same time. A tower can thin on one side and thicken on another. It can lean into its own weather. It can become a shape that no simple blueprint could predict. Prediction is difficult here, because the forms depend on many small variables. The temperature of the vent, the humidity of the gas, the speed of the wind, the temperature of the air, the amount of snow, the shape of the underlying cavity, and the chemistry of the gases all matter. Yet, the whole process can still be described in a soft sentence. The warm mountain breathes, and the cold air builds a chimney around that breath. You may notice how that sentence settles. It is simple, but it holds the whole landscape. It lets the mind release the harder edges of explanation without losing truth. The Erebus ice towers are strange because they are exact and dreamlike at once. Their making is physical, measurable, and real, yet their appearance belongs easily to the borderlands of sleep, where white forms rise from shadow and breathe into the night. We move on, and the slope turns slightly so that the towers behind us align for a moment against the darker flank of Erebus. Their pale shapes stand out clearly now. Some are tall and narrow, some are low and broken. Some are only rounded vents, just beginning to lift above the snow. They look like a small alphabet of ice, each one a different letter in the mountain's slow language. There is no need to read that language quickly. A single tower can hold enough meaning for a long while. Its base tells of snow and wind. Its wall tells of freezing vapor. Its opening tells of warmth below. Its plume tells of ongoing flow. Its changes over time tell of a volcanic system that remains active beneath the Antarctic cold. All of this rests in one pale form. The surface of Mount Erebus has been shaped by volcanic materials that are not always visible under snow. Lavas, ash, bombs, and fragmented rock give the mountain a dark foundation. In places, these materials absorb sunlight and hold heat differently from the surrounding ice. In other places, geothermal warmth comes from below. The snow cover smooths the evidence, but the towers show where the deeper system still reaches upward. When you imagine touching a dark rock, partly exposed beside the snow, it may feel cold at the surface, though its origin was fire. That is another quiet reversal. Rock-borne hot becomes cold in Antarctic air. Vapor-borne warm becomes ice. Snow lying still may hide warmth beneath. The mountain is full of transformations that have slowed down enough for us to contemplate them without strain. These transformations are not only physical, but emotional in the way a landscape can change our inner weather. At first, a volcano in Antarctica might sound severe. Then the image softens. We find white towers instead of flames. We find breath instead of eruption. We find delicate frost where we expected only rock and ice. The mind lowers its guard because the place is strange without being harsh in our telling. The Erebus ice towers ask for a calm kind of awe. Awe does not always need height, noise, or danger. Sometimes it arrives through unlikely balance. A hollow chimney of ice on an active volcano can be enough. You can stand beside it in thought and feel the world widen. Not abruptly, but with the slow opening of a door in a quiet room. The next vent field lies slightly lower in our imagined descent across the slope, though on Erebus even lower ground can still feel high and exposed. Here the towers are smaller and more weathered. Their tops have been rounded by wind, and some openings are partly rimmed with fresh frost. The air has the same dry clarity. The snow smells of cold and stone, and very little else, except when a plume adds its faint volcanic trace. We pause by one small tower whose hollow is visible through a side opening. Inside, the ice is darker, shaded from the sky, with a soft glaze along the inner wall. The passage curves downward beyond sight. A faint warmth seems to rise, not enough to touch the hand from where we stand, but enough to make the idea of the tower feel alive with movement. This inner darkness is important. The Erebus ice towers are not only white surfaces, they contain shadow. The shadow gives depth to the ice and reminds us that every chimney has an unseen center. The outside belongs to wind and cold. The inside belongs to vapor and upward flow. The tower is the meeting place, the boundary made thick enough to stand. In sleep, boundaries can become gentle. The edge of waking and dreaming. The edge of sound and silence. The edge of warmth under blankets and cool air in the room. Here the tower holds the edge of heat and cold. It makes that edge visible and stable, at least for a time. You can rest near it, letting your own boundaries soften, without losing the sense of where you are. The science of the towers has a similar softness when spoken slowly. Water vapor rises because it is carried by warm gas. The gas cools as it nears the surface and meets colder air. Ice crystals form on available surfaces, especially where the temperature is low enough and moisture is present. Those crystals accumulate, and the growing wall guides later flow. The process repeats until the tower has a recognizable body. That body may look solid, but its hollowness changes everything. It is not a block. It is a conduit. It exists because something passes through it. This can be a soothing thought too, that some forms are defined by passage rather than by possession. The Erebus ice towers hold their shape around what they release. They are built around letting breath go. We leave the small tower and follow a faint ridge of snow between vents. The ridge has a satin texture where wind has polished it. Shadows lie on one side. The other side catches dim light. Farther off, a dark rock outcrop breaks through the whiteness, and beyond it another pale chimney rises. barely distinct from the slope until the eye settles on its vertical line. That slow recognition is part of the experience. The towers do not always announce themselves. In certain light, they merge with the snow. Then a rim appears, a shadowed opening, a plume, or a tower's lean against the horizon. You start to notice the small signs first. Your eye becomes quieter. The Erebus ice towers teach attention by hiding in near-sameness. Near-sameness is not emptiness. The snow surface holds many tones, from chalky white to lavender blue. The tower walls hold cloudy layers and faint translucent places. The sky changes from gray to pearl to deepening indigo. The volcanic stones hold black, brown, and rust-dark undertones, though the cold light mutes them. Everything is subdued, but everything is still there. In this subdued world, the idea of heat becomes more powerful, because it is not seen directly. We know it by its effects. A plume, a hollow, a tower, a cave, a slight change in snow crust. This is how many deep processes reveal themselves, not by spectacle, but by consequence. The Erebus ice towers are consequences made beautiful, signs of warmth writing itself into cold air. You may feel your thoughts slowing around that. The mind does not need to chase the heat into the mountain. It can stay with the sign. In geology, as in sleep, indirect knowledge is often enough. We know the room is quiet because sounds have faded. We know the body is resting because breath has deepened. We know the volcano is breathing because ice has risen around a vent. The next tower has a rough rim, almost flower-like in its irregularity, though nothing blooms here in the ordinary way. Frost has grown outward in small shelves around the opening. The shelves catch pale light on their upper surfaces. Beneath them, tiny shadows collect. The plume lifts from the center, thin and nearly invisible, a soft movement above the still crown. It is tempting to imagine the tower as delicate, and in some ways it is. Ice edges can fracture. Frost can vanish under wind. A wall can collapse if warmth undermines it. But the tower also belongs to a resilient process. As long as the vent continues and cold conditions remain, new ice can form. Delicacy and persistence are not opposites here. They share the same frozen form. This sharing is part of the place's quiet wisdom. The Erebus ice towers can be fragile without being insignificant. They can be temporary without being trivial. They can be strange without being threatening. Such distinctions matter for a sleep landscape because they allow the mind to experience vastness without alarm. The world becomes large, but not sharp. It becomes ancient, but still near. If we look down the slope, we can imagine the land falling away toward the wider Antarctic coast. Though our attention remains with Erebus, the mountain rises from a region of sea ice, glaciers, and cold desert, where light and weather can transform perception. On a clear day, distances may appear compressed. In blowing snow, a nearby tower may vanish. The same landscape can feel open or enclosed depending on the air. Weather, then, becomes part of the tower's visibility. A clear day reveals their silhouettes. A drifting haze softens them. Blowing snow may bury their bases or obscure their openings. Low sun can make them glow at the edges. Cloud can flatten them into the whiteness. The Erebus ice towers are not only objects in the landscape, they are experiences shaped by light. Tonight, the light stays low and calm in our imagining. It gives us enough to see, but not enough to wake the mind fully. The towers appear gradually, the snow reflects softly, the sky darkens by degrees. Everything happens by degrees here, even the feeling of descending into rest. There is no abrupt moment when the world changes. There is only a slow transfer from brightness into hush. We pass another cluster where the towers are close to old volcanic debris, dark fragments scattered on the snow. The contrast is beautiful in a subdued way. Black stone, white ice, blue shadow, pale vapor. Each material tells a different part of the story. Stone remembers eruption. Ice records cold. Vapor carries warmth. Snow receives wind. Together, they make the strange quiet of the slope. The debris may help shape local conditions by absorbing sunlight or changing how snow accumulates. Dark surfaces warm faster than white ones in sun, though the Antarctic cold still dominates. Around vents, even small differences can matter. Heat from below, heat from absorbed light, insulation from snow, and exposure to wind all contribute to the microclimate. A tower's form may reflect more variables than the eye first realizes. This complexity does not make the scene busy, it makes it deep. You can look at one pale chimney and feel all the hidden factors resting inside it. That feeling is like looking into still water and knowing there are currents below. The surface remains calm, yet the mind senses motion underneath. The Erebus ice towers offer that same quiet depth, but in ice and air rather than water. The tower beside the dark debris has a low opening that exhales sideways. Vapor slides out and lifts only after it clears the rim. This gives the plume a curved shape, like breath leaving a sleeping mouth and turning upward in cold air. The ice around the side opening is thickened and glazed. Wind has polished part of it smooth. Other parts remain crusted with rime. Rime forms when supercooled droplets or vapor freeze onto surfaces, and in places like Erebus, frost and rime can build delicate textures around vents. The exact form depends on temperature, moisture, wind, and the character of the surface. Some growth is feathery, some is granular, some becomes dense and cloudy. The tower collects these textures like a quiet archive of conditions. You can think of the wall as a page, though not one meant for quick reading. It is written by temperature shifts, gas pulses, storms, and calm periods. A rough band may tell of turbulent growth. A smoother band may tell of wind polishing. A collapsed section may tell of changed flow. The Erebus ice towers are strange partly because they are readable, if you learn to read slowly enough. Slow reading is a gift at night. The mind takes in one line of ice, then another. It doesn't need to finish. It doesn't need to answer. It only follows. The tower's edge rises from the base, curves around the opening, and disappears into shadow. Breath comes and goes. The world narrows to a few pale forms and the steady inward settling of your own attention. As we move away from the debris, the snow becomes smoother again. The wind has erased many small marks, leaving only long, shallow shapes on the surface. The towers here are farther apart. Between them, there is room for the mind to drift. Each interval of empty snow makes the next chimney feel more surprising, as if the mountain has chosen to speak only occasionally. That occasional speech has scientific meaning. Fumaroles are not evenly distributed, because subsurface pathways are not evenly distributed. The gases need routes through rock and ice. Where a route intersects the surface and conditions permit freezing, a tower may develop. Where no route exists, the snow remains unbroken. The field's pattern is a map of hidden permeability, though softened by snow and time. We do not need to draw the map. We only let the idea settle under the landscape. Beneath the smooth snow, pathways differ. Beneath the pathways, heat persists. Above them, ice records what reaches the surface. A simple white slope becomes layered with unseen structure. The Erebus ice towers are the places where that structure touches the cold air and becomes visible. The word visible feels important here. So much of Earth's interior is known through signs: steam, springs, gases, minerals, warm ground, altered rock, small tremors, changing slopes. The towers are part of that family of signs, but they are unusually gentle in appearance. They don't roar or glow. They stand in pale silence, making the mountain's hidden warmth legible through frozen breath. If a listener wakes briefly here, they can return easily. We are still on Mount Erebus. We are still among the Erebus ice towers. The wind is still low. The snow is still blue in the dimness. Warm vapor is still rising into cold air, and ice is still forming around that rise. Nothing has rushed ahead. The journey waits where the mind left it. This waiting quality is one of the reasons the towers suit sleep so well. They are active, but not urgent. They are changing, but not fast. They are rare, but not demanding. A person can drift in and out of attention and still feel held by the same repeating pattern. Warmth below, cold above, vapor between, ice around. The pattern becomes a slow cradle. We come to a place where several small vents appear without tall chimneys. their openings rimmed by low ice collars. These may be younger features, or places where wind prevents high growth, or vents with different flow conditions. The collars look like frozen lips around dark centers. They remind us that not every fumarole becomes a tower. The Erebus ice towers are one outcome among many possible surface expressions. This makes them more special, not less. A tower requires more than a vent. It requires sustained vapor, enough cold, suitable wind conditions, and a structure that can continue growing without being destroyed too quickly. Each tower is therefore a small success of conditions. It stands because many variables have remained compatible for a while. The word success here is quiet, almost geological and free of hurry. The low vents breathe softly in our imagination. Their vapor might be harder to see because it stays close to the ground. Frost gathers around their edges. Snow near them may be thinner or crusted. The openings are dark against the pale surface, like small pupils in the snow. You can feel the landscape looking inward through them, toward warmth and rock and a deeper breath. As we pass, we keep a respectful distance in thought, not because the scene must become dangerous, but because delicate places deserve space. The surface near vents can be complex. Snow can bridge hollows. Ice can be thin. The hidden cavities beneath fumaroles may not be obvious. Our journey is contemplative, and it moves by attention rather than by footsteps. That lets us stay close without disturbing anything. The slope ahead rises slightly, and another full tower appears beyond the low vents. This one has a smoother outer wall, as if wind has polished it evenly over time. Its opening is narrow, and vapor emerges in a steady, faint column before bending downwind. The tower's side catches the last low light with a pearly tone, neither pure white nor gray, but something between. Between is the tower's natural state, between heat and cold, between gas and solid, between volcano and ice field, between visibility and concealment, between permanence and change. We can let those betweens lengthen in the mind, each one opening into the next, until the tower becomes less like a puzzle and more like a place to rest awareness. The science of phase change underlies much of this quiet beauty. Water can shift among vapor, liquid and solid depending on temperature and pressure. In the cold, dry air of Antarctica, ice can pass directly into vapor, and vapor can pass directly into ice. These transitions shape snowfields, frost, and the Erebus ice towers. The tower is a phase change made tall enough to cast a shadow. Pressure also has a role, though not in the dramatic way deep ocean pressure does. Gas rises because pressure gradients guide it upward from the volcanic system toward the lower pressure atmosphere. Within narrow vents, flow may be channeled, warmed, or redirected. At the opening, the pressure difference is part of what allows the plume to escape. Even this invisible gradient becomes part of the tower's form. You don't need to feel that pressure strongly. It is subtle here. It is more like the reason behind the exhale than a sensation against the body. The sensations remain simple. Cold air, dry snow, faint mineral scent, pale light, wind over ice. The explanation stays beneath them, supporting the image without disturbing its calm. We linger by the smooth tower until the plume becomes hard to see. Darkness and vapor begin to resemble one another. The opening remains as a darker oval. The wall holds a faint sheen. Frost at the rim softens the edge. The tower seems almost to withdraw into itself. Though the process continues, the mountain does not stop breathing because the eye can no longer follow. This is a useful thought for sleep too. Much continues when we stop watching. The heart keeps its rhythm. The room keeps its quiet. Night air moves gently around the house. Far away on Mount Erebus, vapor may rise through ice towers under stars, adding tiny crystals to a rim no one is seeing. The world holds countless slow processes in the dark, and none of them need our effort. As we move onward, the imagined path brings us toward a slightly sheltered hollow in the snow, where wind has deposited a smooth drift. From here, several towers can be seen at once, each separated by a span of pale ground. The hollow feels stiller than the open slope. Snow muffles the wind. The towers seem to breathe at different distances, like quiet lamps without flame. This wider view lets the pattern return. The Erebus ice towers are strange individually, but they are also strange as a field. A single tower might be dismissed as an odd formation. Many towers across a volcanic ice landscape reveal a system. They show that the mountain's warmth is not a single point. It reaches the surface through a network of paths, each making its own frozen sign. Network is a precise word, but we can keep it soft. Think of roots, though these are not roots. Think of veins, though the mountain is not a body in that way. Think of hidden threads of warmth, moving through stone and ice, surfacing here and there as white chimneys. The metaphor only needs to carry us gently towards the idea of connection. The sheltered hollow has a different snow sound in imagination, duller and more padded. If you shifted your weight, the crust might sigh rather than squeak. The air is still cold, but the wind's touch is less direct. From here, the nearest tower's plume rises almost straight before drifting sideways. You can feel how small changes in exposure alter the whole sensory field. In a place as severe as Antarctica, shelter can be very small and still meaningful. A drift behind a rock, a cavity under ice, a vent-warmed pocket beneath snow, a lee side of a tower. These microenvironments do not soften the whole continent, but they create local variations. The Erebus ice towers stand in and help create such variation, making the frozen slope less uniform than it first appears. The hidden ice caves associated with some fumaroles may be among the most striking examples of this variation. Their temperatures, humidity, air movement, and chemistry differ from the open slope. Their walls may preserve delicate frost formations. Their passages may shift as ice grows and sublimates. They are not separate from the towers above. They are the tower's lower dream, hollowed into the snow and ice. You can picture one of these caves now, not as a place we enter, but as a quiet image beneath us. A low chamber glows faintly blue where light filters through ice. Frost crystals hang from the ceiling in soft clusters. Warm vapor moves without haste. The floor may be uneven, with snow, ice, and volcanic grit. The air is close, mineral, and damp compared with the open wind above. Such a chamber feels like the inverse of the slope. Outside, openness and dry cold. Inside, enclosure and vapor. Outside, wind. Inside, stillness with breath. Outside, towers rising. Inside, hollows widening. The same process makes both worlds. The Erebus ice towers are the visible crowns of a deeper architecture that the mountain and climate build together, without plan and without hurry. This architecture is temporary, but its temporary nature does not weaken the wonder. Ice architecture always belongs to change. It grows, thins, drips where melting occurs, sublimates where air is dry, collapses where support is lost, and reforms where conditions return. On Erebus, that change is guided by volcanic heat. The caves and towers are therefore not monuments, but moments extended into form. There is a softness in calling them moments. It allows them to be precious without needing permanence. A cloud is a moment. A snowdrift is a moment. A breath in cold air is a moment. The Erebus ice towers are longer moments, held by cold around the steady breath of a volcano. They last long enough to stand beside, but they remain part of motion. We rise from the sheltered hollow in thought and continue along the slope, though the movement is almost dreamlike now. The towers have become familiar companions. Each one repeats the theme and alters it slightly. A taller chimney, a rounded vent, a broken wall, a plume hidden by darkness, a frost rim catching faint light. The repetition is restful because it never becomes sharp. The mountain's name, Erebus, carries old associations of darkness, but here darkness is not something to fear. It is the quiet around the forms. It lets the ice soften. It lets the plumes disappear gently. It gives the imagination room to rest. The Erebus ice towers belong beautifully to that darkness, because their whiteness seems calmer when the world around them grows dim. In full daylight, they may appear crisp and strange, almost startling in their verticality. In twilight, they become quieter. Their details blend into larger shapes. The science remains, but the mood changes. You can still know about fumaroles deposition, sublimation, and volcanic degassing, while letting the eye soften around the pale outlines. Knowledge and drowsiness can share the same space. We pass another tower that has formed close to a shallow depression. Snow has gathered around it unevenly, leaving one side exposed and the other tucked into a drift. The exposed side shows rough ice, pitted and scalloped by wind. The drifted side is smoother, partly buried, almost gentle. This asymmetry tells us the tower is shaped by direction, by the way air moves over the slope. Wind direction matters here, because it controls where vapor may freeze, where frost survives, and where snow accumulates. A steady prevailing wind can make one side harder and more eroded. Changing winds can build irregular layers. Calm periods allow delicate growth that storms later modify. The Erebus ice towers are not only vertical records of vapor, they are horizontal records of weather. Weather is sometimes imagined as passing, while geology is imagined as lasting. On Erebus, the towers blur that distinction. Weather helps build geological-looking forms. Volcanic heat creates structures made of weather-sensitive ice. A storm can alter a tower that took months or years to grow. A quiet period can add intricate frost overnight. The boundary between atmosphere and geology becomes wonderfully thin. You can rest with that thinning boundary. It is like the boundary between waking and sleep, where thoughts become images and images become sensations. The tower is a thought of the volcano made visible by the atmosphere. The plume is an image that vanishes as you look. The snow is a sensation of hush. The whole landscape seems to lean toward dreaming, without ever leaving the real. A few stars are clearer now in the imagined sky. Their light is too faint to change the snow much, but it gives the darkness a sense of height. The towers below feel low and close by comparison. Their openings are dark, their walls pale. One plume catches no light at all, yet we know it is there. Sometimes knowledge itself becomes a soft kind of seeing. The Erebus ice towers are strange because they invite both kinds of seeing. You see the ice with your eyes. You see the warmth with your understanding. You see the vapor when conditions allow. You see the deep volcanic system by inference. Together, these ways of seeing make the landscape layered and calm, a place where the visible and invisible stay in quiet conversation. We continue through that conversation, and the snowfield seems to breathe more slowly with us. The body in bed can sink a little further. The shoulders can release. The jaw can loosen. The mind can keep one pale tower nearby, perhaps the smooth one, perhaps the crooked one, perhaps the broken one with new frost along its edge. Any of them will do. Each carries the same slow lesson, but lesson may be too strong a word for such a quiet place. The tower does not teach by declaring, it teaches by being. It stands where warmth rises and cold receives. It changes without urgency. It keeps a hollow center. It shows that opposites can make form instead of conflict. These are ideas the sleepy mind can hold loosely and let dissolve. The next tower is almost hidden until we are beside it. Low light has flattened its outline against the snow, but a dark vent at the top reveals it. Its wall is thick and rounded, less chimney than mound. Vapor leaks through a narrow opening and curls downwind. Around the top, frost has grown into a small raised rim, like a lip formed by breath. This mound-like tower may represent a different balance of conditions from the taller chimneys. Perhaps the gas flow is weaker, or the wind stronger, or the vent geometry broader. Perhaps the tower has partly collapsed and regrown. Perhaps snow accumulation has buried its base. Several explanations may be possible, and the landscape does not hurry to choose one for us. Uncertainty can be restful when it is not anxious. We do not need to know everything tonight. We know enough to stay oriented. Mount Erebus, Ross Island, Antarctica. Active volcano, fumarolic vents, warm vapor, polar cold, ice towers. These facts hold the scene like a soft frame, and within that frame the unknown can remain spacious rather than troubling. The mound exhales quietly, snow grains move past it, a faint mineral scent appears and disappears. The ice surface catches the last light in tiny points where frost crystals face the sky. You can imagine the cold pressing evenly around all of it, not as an enemy, but as the condition that allows the white form to exist. Without the cold, this strange tower would be only invisible steam. That thought returns us to gratitude for the cold itself. It is easy to think of cold only as absence, but here it is creative. It gives shape to vapor. It preserves snow. It hardens surfaces for wind to carve. It makes shadows blue. It lets the Erebus ice towers stand as pale, hollow witnesses to the mountain's interior warmth. Cold is not empty here. It is active. Warmth is active too, though hidden. It keeps the vent open. It carries moisture upward. It alters ice from within. It creates sheltered spaces under snow. It allows small chemical and microbial possibilities. The towers exist because neither cold nor warmth completely wins. They remain in a long, slow negotiation, and that negotiation is the calm heart of their strangeness. We leave the mound behind, moving toward a darker shoulder of volcanic ground, where snow thins in patches. The exposed rock looks almost black in the twilight. It has an old, rough surface, broken into angular pieces. Some edges hold frost. Some hollows collect snow. Against this dark ground, a small ice tower appears especially pale, like a candle that has forgotten flame and chosen stillness. The dark rock reminds us again that Erebus is not an ice mountain alone. It is an active volcano wearing ice in a polar climate. This combination makes the ice towers possible, but it also gives them their emotional power. They are not formed in a gentle alpine meadow or beside a warm spring. They rise from a volcano in Antarctica, where the extremes are so quiet that they seem almost meditative. Meditative extremes are different from dramatic ones. They don't shout. They hold their positions. The heat stays below. The cold stays around. The wind crosses the slope. The vapor rises. The tower grows. Everything has force, but the force is distributed into slow processes. You can let the mind rest in that distribution, feeling no single point of tension. The small tower near the dark rock has a side that gleams more than the others. Perhaps the ice there is denser, or the wind has polished it, or a thin glaze has formed from vapor refreezing. It reflects the dim sky in a muted way. The rest of the wall remains rough and opaque. This contrast within one tower makes it feel quietly complex, like a single note with overtones. Complexity does not disturb the sleep rhythm when it is held gently. It becomes richness instead of noise. The Erebus ice towers offer richness in muted colors, in subtle textures, in hidden processes, and in the calm repetition of vapor meeting cold. You can drift among these details without needing to arrange them. They arrange themselves around the central image of the breathing volcano. And now, as the path carries us beyond the darker shoulder and back toward wider snow, the towers behind us become pale memories in the low Antarctic light. While ahead, another faint plume rises from the slope, barely visible at first, then slowly finding its shape against the darkening air. The plume finds its shape only for a moment, then loosens into the air, and we follow it with the same slow attention we have given every breath of Mount Erebus. It rises from a low place in the snow, not yet crowned by a high chimney. Around the opening, frost has gathered in a pale collar. The Erebus ice towers begin this way sometimes, as small signs of warmth on a wide frozen surface. You can imagine kneeling beside the vent in thought, though we keep a careful distance from the hidden hollows beneath the snow. The rim is uneven, built from crystals that caught and held the vapor. Some are sharp and clear, some are cloudy and granular. A tiny shadow rests inside the opening, where the passage bends downward toward warmer ground. Nothing about it is large, yet everything about it feels connected to depth. The strange thing is how much the small vent already contains. It contains the volcano's heat in miniature. It contains water shifting from vapor to ice. It contains the Antarctic air, dry and cold enough to preserve delicate frost. It contains the possibility of height, if the plume continues and the conditions remain steady. A tower may grow from this rim, not by ambition, but by repetition. Repetition is the main builder here. Breath after breath leaves moisture behind. Cold after cold receives it. Wind after wind alters the edge. Snow after snow changes the base. The Erebus ice towers are not made by a single grand moment, but by the uncountable return of small conditions, each one quiet enough to be missed and faithful enough to make a form. That faithfulness belongs to physics, not intention, yet the feeling is peaceful. The world keeps certain promises because matter behaves in reliable ways. Vapor cools, ice forms, heat rises, wind moves around obstacles, snow settles where air slows. When we understand these patterns gently, the strange landscape becomes trustworthy, not ordinary, but coherent, in a way the body can rest near. We move onward, and the vent collar fades behind us into the snow. Ahead, a taller tower stands with a ragged opening at the top, its wall catching a faint silver light. It looks older than the low vent, though age is difficult to read precisely from appearance alone. It has survived enough weather to become irregular. It has grown enough ice to feel established. It has changed enough to look wise. The word wise is only a human softness we lend to it. The tower knows nothing in the human sense. Still, its shape holds experience. It has met wind from more than one direction. It has thickened around many exhalations. It has lost crystals to dry air and gained them again from vapor. It has been edited by the slope, the sky, the vent, and the cold. This is one reason the Erebus ice towers look so different from manufactured towers. Human towers often strive toward symmetry, straightness, and intention. These have no such purpose. Their irregularity is their truth. A bulge may show where vapor favored one side. A hollow may show where warmth removed ice. A leaning wall may show wind, weakness, or uneven growth. The beauty is not designed. It is found. We stand beside the ragged tower and let the silence widen. The opening is dark, but a pale thread of vapor moves through it. Around the rim, frost has formed rough teeth, softened by new deposition. The wall below is thick and clouded, with faint bands where conditions changed during growth. Your eye can follow those bands downward, each one a quiet layer of weather and breath. Layering is important in ice, as it is in rock. A glacier holds layers of snowfall, a lakebed holds layers of sediment, a volcanic cone holds layers of eruption and ash. The Erebus ice towers hold layers of frozen vapor, wind-polished surfaces, buried bases, and regrown edges. Their layering is more delicate than a cliff's, but it still tells time in a soft language. Time on Erebus is not simple. There is the quick time of a plume vanishing. There is the daily time of temperature shifts and light. There is the seasonal time of storms, darkness, and changing snow. There is the yearly time of towers growing, collapsing, and reforming. Beneath that lies the volcanic time of Mount Erebus itself, older, deeper, and slower than any single tower. You can place your thoughts inside those times without needing to measure them. The plume is now. The frost rim is recent. The tower wall is older. The volcano is older still. The island and the continent hold deeper histories. The mind can descend through these times the way it descends through layers of water, softly, without reaching for the bottom too quickly. The cold air around us seems to steady each thought. It has almost no scent until the tower breathes. Then, for a passing moment, there may be a faint acidity, a mineral dryness, a hint of sulfur or warm stone carried through the vent. It fades quickly. The clean cold returns. The alternation is subtle, like a quiet reminder that the White Tower is rooted in fire. This hidden fire is not the fire of a camp or a lamp. It is planetary heat, stored and moving beneath rock. Magma below Erebus releases gases, and those gases travel upward through the volcanic system. By the time they reach the snow surface through fumaroles, they have become part of a polar phenomenon, transformed by the air into ice architecture. The path from magma to frost is long and strange. Strange, but not hurried. Even when gas moves continuously, the tower grows in increments. Each crystal is small. Each surface change is modest. The whole chimney is a cumulative calm. You can let that calm enter your breathing now, letting each exhale feel like one more invisible addition to a quiet inner wall, not trapping anything, only giving rest a place to settle. As we drift beyond the ragged tower, the ground opens into a gentle saddle, where snow has gathered more evenly. The wind is lower here, or seems lower, because the surrounding forms break its path. A few vents are hidden under smooth crusts. Others reveal themselves by faint stains, small holes or delicate frost. The Erebus ice towers in this area feel like a family of different ages, from tiny collars to hollow chimneys. A field like this can change over time, as vents migrate or become blocked. The gases seek easier routes, and ice responds to new patterns. A tower may stop growing if its vent seals, or if flow diverts elsewhere. Nearby, another tower may begin. The field is therefore dynamic, though the pace is slow enough that it appears almost motionless during our passing. This slow dynamism is one of the loveliest qualities of volcanic ice landscapes. They are neither fixed nor frantic. They belong to the middle pace of natural change, where patience reveals motion. If you came back after a long absence, you might see differences. A tower gone, a new rim formed, a drift shifted, a plume strengthened. The mountain's quiet conversation would have continued. We pause by a low frost mound with two openings instead of one. Vapor rises more clearly from the larger opening, while the smaller one shows only a faint wavering in the air. The ice between them is thick and lumpy. Perhaps the two passages join below. Perhaps they are separate routes through a shared warm cavity. We don't need to decide. Their nearness is enough to suggest hidden complexity. Hidden complexity is everywhere around the Erebus ice towers. Under the surface, warm gases may move through irregular voids, fractures, and porous volcanic material. Snow and ice can insulate some pathways while exposing others. Heat can reshape the underside of the frozen cover. The surface feature may look simple, but the root beneath it can be braided, winding, and changeable. The idea of braiding is restful here. Not a rope pulled tight, but strands moving beside one another, crossing quietly, parting and joining. Gas pathways braid through fractures. Wind paths braid around towers. Frost patterns braid across rims. Even our attention braids science with sensation, moving from explanation to snow texture, from chemistry to dim light, from volcanic heat to the sound of a soft hush. The hush deepens as the sky darkens. The snow now holds more blue than white. The towers become pale islands in a dim sea of ice and volcanic slope. Far above, the upper mountain is a shadowed mass. Far below, the wider Antarctic world rests beyond our view. In between, the fumarole field breathes quietly, each plume brief, each chimney patient, each detail softened by night. Night changes the emotional shape of the Erebus ice towers. In daylight, they may invite curiosity. At night, they invite trust. You cannot see every crack or frost feather, but you know the process continues. You know the tower's hollow center remains. You know warmth is rising through the cold. The unseen is no longer empty. It is filled with slow, reliable motion. We follow that motion in thought into the tower's interior. The passage may be narrow near the top and wider below. Its walls may be coated in frost, glazed by refreezing vapor, or uneven where warmth has removed ice. Air flows upward because the vent supplies gas, and the warmer mixture is less dense than the surrounding cold air. The chimney helps guide that flow, turning the tower into a frozen flue. A flue is an ordinary word, but on Erebus it becomes uncanny. There is no house, no stove, no fire tended by hands. There is only the volcano's interior warmth and the white chimney formed around it. The resemblance to human structures rises naturally in the mind, then falls away. The tower is not ours. It is the mountain's own breathing architecture. This is why we keep our language gentle. The towers don't need to be made into monsters, castles, warnings, or myths. They are already enough. A scientific description does not flatten them. It gives them room to be exactly what they are. Fumarolic ice chimneys on an Antarctic volcano, built by vapor deposition and shaped by wind, cold, and changing volcanic flow. The words are plain, and the image remains wondrous. The next chimney has a top that seems partly sealed. Vapor escapes from a side crack below the rim, drifting horizontally before lifting. The sealed top suggests that frost may have closed an older opening, while the gas found another exit. This is one way towers evolve. A passage closes, pressure redirects the flow, and the chimney develops a new breathing point. You can hear the metaphor without forcing it. Sometimes a path closes, and another opens quietly. The tower does not panic. It changes shape. It lets the breath find a way. In the cold, this redirection is written in ice. A side plume, a new rim, a thickened wall. The Erebus ice towers carry these small adjustments without drama, which is why they feel so restful. The side crack is rimmed with especially fine frost. It grows outward like delicate lace, though the word lace belongs to human craft, and this belongs to physics. The crystals branch where vapor cools and deposits along edges. Their fine structure may vanish in stronger wind, but for now it softens the crack. The tower seems to have healed its own opening with white feathers. We stay there for a few breaths, noticing how the plume slips through the frost and disappears. The sound, if there is one, is almost below hearing. The air around the vent wavers slightly. The smell is faint and dry. The snow nearby has a crust that shines differently from untouched drifts. All these cues hold us close to the topic, close to the place, close to Mount Erebus. The body may now feel as though it is lying under a broad, snow-quiet sky. The room around the listener can become the Antarctic darkness for a little while. The blanket can become warmth held safely against cold air. The breath can become slow vapor, rising and fading. None of this requires effort. The imagery is soft enough to carry itself. Beyond the side-vented tower, a shallow line of depressions crosses the slope. Some may be wind forms. Some may be related to underlying cavities or heat. On Erebus, the surface often requires careful interpretation, because snow can hide as much as it reveals. The Erebus ice towers are helpful because they are clear signs of fumarolic activity, but even they belong to a landscape of partial concealment. Concealment is not the same as secrecy in a harsh sense. It is simply how the mountain is layered. Snow covers rock, ice covers warmth, frost covers vapor pathways, darkness covers detail, the mind covers waking thought with dream. Each covering softens what lies beneath, while still allowing some sign to rise through. A tower is one of those signs. Pale and hollow, we cross the line of depressions in imagination and reach a broader tower with a flared base. It rises from a mound of drifted snow, making it hard to tell where tower ends and slope begins. The upper wall narrows toward a dark opening. The base may have been buried by repeated snowfall, or the tower may have grown within a drift that later hardened around it. This blending of snowdrift and ice chimney makes the structure look rooted. It is not rooted like a tree, of course, but visually it seems to emerge from the slope with quiet certainty. The snow presses against it, the vent lifts through it, the wall rises above it. Everything is joined by cold. The Erebus ice towers often feel strange because their boundaries are softened by the same weather that shapes them. At the flared base, wind has carved a shallow moat on one side, where moving air accelerated around the obstacle and scoured snow away. On the opposite side, a drift has built up, smooth and rounded. This small pair of features tells a story of airflow around the tower. Even stillness here is full of motion that has already happened. The tower's upper opening exhales a steady plume. In the dimness, it appears and disappears depending on the angle of view. When it catches a little light, it becomes pale. When it crosses a dark background, it is clearer. Against the snow, it nearly vanishes. Visibility depends on contrast, and contrast is always changing. The plume is real whether or not the eye can hold it. So much of this place teaches that lesson. Warmth is real when it is hidden. Gas is real when it is invisible. Microbial life may be real when it cannot be seen without instruments. Time is real when change is too slow for one evening. The Erebus ice towers stand at the threshold of visibility, giving the mind just enough to trust the unseen. Trusting the unseen can be a gentle part of sleep. You don't need to monitor every breath. You don't need to hold the night together. The body knows many quiet processes. The world knows many more. On Erebus, the mountain breathes through ice, whether or not anyone watches. The plume rises. The frost grows. The snow shifts. The darkness accepts it all. We leave the flared tower and move toward a slight rise where the snow is thinner and scattered stones show through. The stones have rough surfaces, and some are partly rimmed with frost, where vapor or airborne moisture has found them. The contrast between dark volcanic fragments and pale ice is especially clear here. You can sense the mountain's dual nature, cold at the surface and warm within. The stones remind us that Erebus is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire in a broad geological sense, though it stands in a remote Antarctic setting, unlike the volcanoes people often imagine. Its activity is persistent, complex, and studied because it offers insight into volcanic degassing and magma behavior. Yet tonight we keep returning to the most sleep-soft expression of that activity: ice towers made from breath in cold air. A dark stone near a vent may absorb a little sunlight when daylight returns, warming more quickly than the surrounding snow. That small warmth can influence frost, melt-free sublimation, or local snow texture. Around fumaroles, small differences matter. The landscape may look grand and empty, but it is shaped by tiny imbalances. The Erebus ice towers are large enough to see because many tiny imbalances align. Alignment is a soothing idea here. Conditions align and a tower grows. Breath aligns with cold and ice gathers. Wind aligns with shape and a drift forms. The mind aligns with rhythm and sleep approaches. Nothing has to be forced. The place itself offers a pattern of gentle correspondences, each one quieter than the last, each one leading attention deeper into stillness. The next tower is partly hidden behind stones, and at first only its upper half is visible. It has a narrow neck and a wider, rougher crown. The crown is crusted with thick frost, perhaps because vapor spreads and cools rapidly as it leaves the opening. The neck below is smoother, its wall rounded by wind. It looks like a form grown upward and then widened by the air. When vapor exits a confined opening, it expands and mixes with colder air. Moisture may freeze near the rim, thickening the crown. Wind then redistributes or removes some of that ice. If the plume direction remains steady, growth may favor one side. If it shifts, the crown may become irregular all around. The tower's top is therefore a record of escaping vapor meeting the immediate atmosphere. You can picture that meeting again and again, because repetition is the night's rhythm. Warm gas enters cold air. Moisture becomes frost. Frost thickens. Wind edits. The opening persists. The plume rises, warm gas enters cold air again. Each cycle is quiet. Each cycle leaves only a little behind. Over time, the tower's crown becomes a frozen memory of exhalation. The surface of the crown might be brittle, full of tiny voids where crystals joined loosely, or it might be dense in places where vapor refroze as a smoother glaze. The tower likely holds both textures, rough and smooth, opaque and translucent, strong and fragile. This mixture makes it feel less like a single object and more like a small landscape in itself. Within that small landscape, light behaves in complex ways. It scatters through cloudy ice. It reflects from frost. It disappears into cracks. It gathers faintly along edges. In stronger sun, the tower might sparkle in many points. In our dim evening, it glows only softly, enough to reveal its outline without waking the mind. The glow is low, patient and nearly colorless. We continue, and the field begins to feel quieter still. There are fewer visible vents for a while. The snow spreads in a broad sheet, gently sloping, marked only by wind lines and occasional dark stones. This interval matters. It gives the mind space between details. The Erebus ice towers remain behind and ahead, but for now, we travel through the silence that surrounds them. Silence around a feature can be part of the feature's meaning. A tower feels stranger because the landscape around it is so open. A plume feels softer because most of the air is still. A small frost rim feels more delicate because there are no forests, streams, or crowded textures nearby. The emptiness is not filler, it is the frame that lets each chimney appear. The Antarctic landscape often works this way. It reduces visual noise until small differences become important. A crack in snow, a change in texture, a line of shadow, a faint plume. In a busier place, these details might be lost. On Erebus, they are given space, and the Erebus ice towers become quiet focal points in a vast white field. You may feel your own thoughts becoming more spacious too. The details are there if you want them, but they do not crowd. The mind can drift over snow, return to a tower, drift again. It can hold the volcano in the background, the ice in the foreground, the vapor between them. This alternating focus is like breathing, near and far, near and far. After the broad interval, another tower appears at the edge of the imagined path, taller than most we have seen recently. Its sides are irregular, with one vertical groove running from near the top almost to the base. The groove may mark a line where ice has sublimated faster, or where melt-free erosion and wind have deepened a weakness. It gives the tower a sense of downward flow, though the actual vapor moves upward. This reversal of visual and physical direction is pleasingly strange. The groove draws the eye down, the plume rises up, snow drifts sideways, heat comes from below, cold presses from all around. Several directions meet in one form. The Erebus ice towers are never simply vertical. Even when they stand upright, they are crossroads of movements, slowed into ice. The tower's groove catches shadow, making the wall appear thicker on either side. Small frost clusters cling along the edges. Near the base, wind has packed snow into a hard crescent. The opening at the top is slightly off-center. This asymmetry suggests that the vent's path through the tower is not a perfect cylinder. It may twist, narrow, widen, or split inside. Inside such a tower, the temperature would vary from wall to center, from base to rim, from windward side to sheltered side. Vapor might deposit ice in one zone, while sublimation removes it in another. The airflow might pulse with changes in vent pressure, external wind, or thermal conditions. The visible tower is therefore the outer skin of a three-dimensional process. A three-dimensional process is a beautiful thing to imagine slowly. Not a diagram, not a chart, but a living shape of movement. Warmth rising, ice thickening, air sliding, frost branching, snow gathering, shadow deepening. The mind can move through these layers without effort, as if drifting around the tower in a slow circle while the mountain continues to breathe. We pause in that circle and let the cold air touch the scene evenly. The tower's top fades into the dimness. The groove remains visible a little longer because shadow holds it. The plume is almost gone to sight. The snow at the base becomes the same color as the slope. You can feel the landscape simplifying as darkness reduces detail, leaving only the essential forms. This simplification is not loss, it is rest. The mind no longer has to distinguish every crystal. It can hold the whole tower as one pale shape, and the whole mountain as one dark presence. Science remains beneath that simplicity, like warm rock beneath snow. You know why the tower stands. You know why it breathes. You can let the explanation sleep under the image. As we move again, the path seems to curve toward a place where the slope dips gently, and a line of small plumes becomes visible against the darker ground. The plumes are faint, almost more sensed than seen. Each one marks a vent. Some have towers, some have only low rims. Together they make a quiet procession across the snow, like small pauses in the mountain's breathing. The Erebus ice towers in this line may have formed along a fracture zone, where gases find several connected routes upward. Fractures can guide hydrothermal and volcanic gases through otherwise resistant rock. Snow and ice cover the structure, but the vents reveal it. The surface line becomes a hint of the underground line. What is hidden in rock becomes visible as pale interruptions in snow. There is a deep calm in seeing hidden structure expressed so gently. No rupture needs to open in our imagination. No violent change is required. The mountain's interior organization appears through small, repeated exhalations. Each tower is like a bead on an invisible thread, and the thread runs through stone, warmth, and pressure beneath the frozen slope. The plumes drift in the same wind, leaning together. This shared lean makes the air itself visible. You can see the wind not by snow blowing, but by vapor bending. The towers are instruments again, showing what the senses might otherwise miss. Cold reveals breath. Breath reveals wind. Wind reveals shape. Shape reveals hidden heat. The chain is quiet and complete. We follow the line for a while, letting each vent pass in a slow rhythm. One low collar, one narrow tower, one broken rim, one plume without a visible chimney, one mound half buried in snow. The sequence has variation, but no urgency. It is like listening to a soft radio signal from the mountain, each feature a low note in a calm geological melody. The body may grow heavier now, and that is welcome. The Erebus ice towers will remain clear enough in the mind even if attention blurs. You might remember only the white chimney and the dark opening. You might remember the warm breath freezing in cold air. You might remember the volcanic island under a polar sky. Any one of these images can carry the rest. At the end of the line, a taller tower stands slightly apart, as if the fracture continues, but the surface expression has changed. Its base is almost completely buried, so the tower seems to rise directly from a smooth mound. The top is open and rounded. A plume lifts steadily from it, catching a faint grey tone against the darker upper slope. We move toward it with care and quiet. This tower feels mature in our imagined sequence, though maturity in ice is always provisional. Its walls are thick enough to endure for a time. Its opening is clear enough to vent. Its base is integrated with surrounding snow. It has the calm presence of something that has been shaped repeatedly and has not yet lost the conditions that sustain it. If the vent below continues, the tower may grow taller or wider. If snow buries the base further, its apparent height may change without the chimney itself shrinking. If the top partly seals, vapor may break out through a side. If a storm scours the wall, its profile may sharpen. The future of the tower is not a straight line. It is a set of possibilities held in cold. Possibility is softer here than in ordinary waking life. It doesn't press, it simply exists. The tower may change in many ways, and none of them need our management. The mountain has its own pace. The air has its own pace. Ice has its own patient rules. You and I are only passing through in attention, learning to feel less separate from slow change. The mature tower's plume seems steady, and for a moment we imagine its path downward, through the hollow, into the warmer cavity below, then farther into fractured volcanic ground. The path is not straight, but our thought can follow it gently, down through ice, down through snow, down through rock, down toward heat that has risen from deeper earth, then back upward again as breath. This up and down movement makes the tower feel like a bridge. It connects above and below, cold and warm, visible and hidden. It is not a bridge we cross with feet. It is a bridge for gas, moisture, heat, and imagination. The Erebus ice towers are strange because they are built around connection, yet they appear at first like solitary white figures on a barren slope. Barren is another word that softens under attention. The slope may be sparse, but it is not empty. It has heat gradients, gas flow, ice growth, wind patterns, snow textures, microbial possibilities, rock histories, and light changes. A place can be visually spare and scientifically rich. It can be quiet and full at the same time. This is one of Erebus's most peaceful contradictions. We let that contradiction rest as we stand by the tower. The cold air is steady. The plume rises. The snow around the base is smooth. The The wall is rough enough to hold shadow. A tiny crescent of frost along the rim catches light. Everything is reduced to a few soft impressions, and those impressions are enough. The tower feels like a slow breath made visible. Beyond it, the slope continues into darkness, and perhaps more towers stand there unseen. We do not need to reach them all. The field is larger than our attention, and that is part of its comfort. There are always more processes than the mind can hold, more crystals forming, more vents breathing, more snow moving, more hidden warmth under ice. The world continues beyond the edge of description. Still, we drift a little farther, because the script continues downward and inward through the same calm terrain. Another faint plume appears ahead, lower on the slope, near a patch of exposed dark rock. It is barely visible at first. Then the wind shifts, and it crosses the rock's shadow, turning pale for a few seconds. The plume seems to reveal itself only when the background is dark. This small visual fact carries quiet meaning. Some things are seen because contrast allows them. Vapor needs shadow, ice needs rock, warmth needs cold. The Erebus ice towers need the meeting of opposites to appear at all. Without contrast, the process may continue invisibly. With contrast, it becomes a white tower, a plume, a trace of breath in polar air. The tower near the rock is short, but its top is beautifully clear. The rim forms an oval, with one side thickened by frost. The inside slopes down into shadow. The outer wall is rough, almost scalloped, where wind and sublimation have worked unevenly. Around the base, dark grit has collected on the snow, probably from volcanic material carried by wind or exposed through thinning cover. Grit changes the snow's surface. Dark particles absorb more light and may warm slightly under sun, affecting the texture around them. They can also mark wind pathways or the breakdown of nearby rock. On a fumarolic slope, such small details add to the complexity. The Erebus ice towers do not rise from pure white abstraction. They rise from a real volcanic landscape, textured with ash, stone, frost, and air. The air here feels thinner again in imagination, perhaps because the sky has opened above the dark rock. A faint wind passes over the exposed surface with a lower sound than it makes over snow. Stone answers differently than ice. Snow whispers. Rock murmurs. The tower breathes. These sounds remain subtle, almost too low to name, but together they create a quiet acoustic world. That acoustic world is important for rest. It has no sharp edges. The loudest thing is silence, shaped by small variations. A wisp of vapor, a snow grain sliding, a faint wind over rock, a distant emptiness around the mountain. You can let these sounds become slower than hearing, more like pressure in the mind. A gentle surrounding hush that makes the Erebus ice towers feel near and safe. The word safe here belongs to the listening space, not to careless travel. In reality, such landscapes require knowledge, distance, and respect. But in our narration, the safety comes from observation without intrusion. We don't touch fragile rims. We don't enter hidden cavities. We don't disturb the snow around vents. We only watch, learn, and drift, allowing the place to remain fully itself. This respectful distance preserves the wonder. The tower does not become a possession. It stays on Mount Erebus, breathing in its own conditions. We remain visitors in thought, quiet enough to hear what the landscape offers. The Erebus ice towers are strange in a way that resists taking. They are best met by stillness, and stillness is exactly what the night is asking of you. We continue past the short tower, and the slope begins to feel more open again. The line of vents has faded. The exposed rocks become fewer. Snow covers the ground in a smooth, pale sheet, and the darkness above deepens. Somewhere behind us, the towers still stand, each with its own rim and hollow. Ahead, only one faint plume remains visible, rising from a low, almost hidden opening. As we approach that last visible plume in this stretch, the snow around it appears slightly raised, as if a buried form is beginning to emerge. Perhaps a tower is growing beneath the drift. Perhaps the vent has recently shifted, and ice is only starting to build. The rim is small, but the process is present. The mountain's breath is already finding the cold and leaving a trace. There is comfort in beginnings that do not announce themselves. A tower can begin as a frost ring. A cave can begin as a warmed hollow. A plume can begin as invisible gas rising through snow. Change can start quietly, without spectacle, in conditions no one notices at first. The Erebus ice towers remind us that the world is always beginning small things in hidden places. The plume bends low, almost touching the snow before lifting away. Its motion is slow and continuous. The rim glows faintly where frost catches the last light. The opening remains dark. Around it, the snow is smooth enough that the vent seems like a single dark eye in a pale face. We stay with it for a while, letting its smallness become large through attention. Smallness becomes large when the mind is quiet. A frost ring contains a volcano. A plume contains a pressure gradient. A dark opening contains a route through snow, ice, and rock. A faint scent contains chemical traces from below. A low mound contains the possible future of a tower. Nothing needs to be big to be deep. Erebus teaches this with every small fumarole. The body can let go a little more. The breath can slow to match the plume. The eyes, if they are closed, can keep seeing the pale rim and the dark center. The room can fall away into blue snow and cold air. The script does not need to move quickly, because the mountain itself is not moving quickly. We are following the pace of ice. A little wind crosses the vent, and the plume flattens for a moment, then rises again when the air eases. The frost rim will record some of this, perhaps in a thicker deposit on the leeward side, perhaps in a roughened edge where crystals form and break. The tower that may someday grow here will not be symmetrical. It will remember the wind from its earliest breaths. Memory in ice is temporary, but real. Snow remembers storms until wind reshapes it. Ice remembers bubbles and layers until melting or sublimation changes them. A tower remembers flow conditions until collapse or regrowth overwrites the record. This kind of memory is not fixed like writing in stone. It is more like breath on glass, lasting long enough to show that something passed through. The Erebus ice towers, then, are memories continually renewed. They remember volcanic exhalation by becoming ice around it. They remember weather by leaning, roughening, and smoothing. They remember snow by burying their bases. They remember cold by remaining possible at all. Every feature is a trace of relationship, and every trace can be softened by the next season. We leave the small beginning behind, and the imagined path turns toward a quieter, broader darkness where fewer plumes can be seen. The mountain's breathing has not stopped. It has only become less visible. The towers behind us are now mostly shapes in memory, but their processes continue in the field. Warm vapor rises, ice forms, wind passes, snow settles. The volcanic ground holds its heat beneath the pale surface. In this less visible zone, we can think more deeply about why Erebus, in particular, makes such unforgettable ice towers. It is not just any cold volcano. It is a persistently active Antarctic volcano with fumaroles in an environment where vapor can freeze and accumulate. The high elevation, polar climate, snow cover, and steady geothermal emissions all contribute. The landscape is rare because the combination is rare. Rarity here is not flashy. It is a quiet narrowing of conditions. Many volcanoes have fumaroles but lack polar cold. Many icy landscapes have cold but lack active volcanic vents. Some places have geothermal heat but different moisture, wind, or surface conditions. Erebus brings the ingredients together in a way that allows hollow ice chimneys to grow from the mountain's breath. You can imagine each ingredient arriving slowly, cold air descending from the polar atmosphere, heat rising from the volcanic interior, water vapor traveling upward through rock, wind sliding over the slope, snow gathering and thinning, time passing. The tower forms where these ingredients overlap. It is not a miracle outside nature. It is nature being exact in a quiet way. The exactness does not make the scene less dreamlike. it may make it more so. Dreams often gather, unlike things, into one image, and here the waking world has done something similar by lawful means. A volcano wears ice, a chimney is built from vapor, a desert is white with snow, a barren slope holds hidden warmth and possible microscopic life. The real place already has the logic of sleep. As we move through the darkness, the towers become internal images. You may see one with a flared base, one with a side vent, one with a ragged crown, one just beginning as a frost ring. They drift past slowly, not as a catalogue, but as variations of one soft pattern. The mind can let them pass without naming them all. The feeling of Erebus remains. The feeling is cold, spacious, and faintly warm at the center. It is the smell of mineral vapor in clean air. It is the sight of pale ice against dark rock. It is the sound of wind becoming softer around snow. It is the knowledge of heat beneath stillness. It is the Erebus ice towers, standing quietly where fire and frost share the same breath. We continue a little farther into the wide snow, and at last another tower appears, very faint in the dimness, more sensed by its vertical shadow than seen by its whiteness. It stands alone, with no visible plume at first. Then the wind shifts, and a narrow thread rises from its top, pale against the dark side of the mountain, opening the next stretch of the slope before us. The narrow thread of vapor rises and fades, and after it disappears, the tower remains in the dim Antarctic stillness, pale and hollow, holding its place on the shoulder of Mount Erebus. You can let your attention rest there, near the rim where warm breath meets the cold and becomes part of the wall. The wind has softened to almost nothing. The snow keeps its blue shadow. The dark volcanic ground beneath it holds its hidden warmth without asking to be seen. The Erebus ice towers stand quietly around us now, some visible, some only remembered by shape, each one breathing in its own slow way. There is no need to move closer. There is no need to understand more tonight. The strange white chimneys have already given the mind enough. A dark opening, a pale rim, a faint plume, a mountain exhaling through ice into a sky that does not hurry. You may feel yourself settling as the landscape settles. The body grows heavier, like snow laid gently over snow. The thoughts that were moving begin to lose their edges. Even the volcano seems calm from here, not asleep, but patient, with its deep heat folded beneath the frozen surface. Above it, the cold air receives each small breath and lets it vanish into quiet. The last visible tower fades into the blue-gray slope until it is almost the same color as the snow around it. Only the memory of its opening remains, a soft, dark center in a white form made by fire and cold together. Far below, the wider Antarctic night stretches outward. Here, on the mountain, nothing calls, nothing rushes, and the vapor rises so gently that it seems less like motion than rest itself. And now the plume is gone, the snow is still, and Mount Erebus keeps breathing beneath the ice, where the strange towers stand in darkness, and the quiet is complete.